Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the City Planning Commission special meeting. First, Madam Secretary, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a City Planning Commission special meeting held in Spector Hall at 22 Reade Street. Today is Monday, May 9th, 2016, and the time is 1:05. I will now call the roll. Chairman Weisbrod.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Besser.
Here.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner De La Uz.
Here.
Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Edie.
Here.
Commissioner Efron.
Here.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes, here.
Commissioner Ortiz. A quorum is present. Let's turn to page 1 in the calendar. First item of the calendar is the report section, page 1. Calendar numbers 1 and 2. Borough Brooklyn, CD6, calendar number 1, C150361ZMK, and calendar number 2, N160081ZRK. The matter of applications for amendments of the zoning map and the zoning resolution concerning the Oxford Nursing Home. For favorable reports on calendar numbers 1 and 2, Chairman Weisbrod.
The matter before us is a rezoning to transform an existing M21 zoning district into a mixed-use M14 R6 district, and to establish a special mixed-use district in MX5 that would permit manufacturing, residential, and community facility use. On a purely land use basis, given the context of the surrounding area, I find the proposed zoning change appropriate. However, we know that the applicant's intention here is to develop a nursing home and an ambulatory diagnostic center on the site, which the proposed zoning change would allow as of right. The site is located in Red Hook within a 100-year flood zone, which experienced significant flooding during Superstorm Sandy. Although many nursing homes continue to operate within flood zones, it's incumbent upon us to provide a heightened degree of scrutiny before approving a land use change that permits a new nursing home housing a vulnerable population to be located in such an area. Clearly, residents of a facility located in a flood zone face a greater likelihood of having to be evacuated in the case of a storm than those not located in the flood zone. But in this particular case, I am persuaded that the advantages of the proposed facility in Red Hook substantially outweigh this heightened risk. I note that the New York State Department of Health, which initially, after Sandy, imposed a moratorium on new nursing homes in flood zones, has now lifted the moratorium. State DOH is ultimately responsible for issuing a certificate of need that this nursing home will be able to operate safely and appropriately. The applicant here has provided compelling evidence that the proposed new nursing home will be developed up to state-of-the-art resiliency standards, allowing it to continue to safely house residents in case of a flood. The new nursing home will be, in general, a substantial upgrade from its current facility in Fort Greene, which it is being forced to leave. The applicant has also submitted a compelling support regarding its emergency preparedness and evacuation procedures in the event of a flood. That support comes from Joe Bruno, the former head of the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management and former New York City Fire Commissioner, who coordinated the city's response to both Hurricane Irene in 2011 and Superstorm Sandy in 2012, including in Red Hook. I also recognize that there is a dire need for additional nursing homes throughout the city. That was an important consideration behind this commission's recent crafting of zoning for quality and affordability, which was intended to and did, make it easier to site such facilities in the city. Finally, I note that the Red Hook community is underserved in terms of both services for seniors and health care more generally. This facility would provide an important new health resource to the community. It would make it easier for residents of Red Hook to visit their loved ones, and it would also provide outpatient and ambulatory health services to the general Red Hook community. And for these reasons, I vote aye.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Similarly, I believe that the measures taken by the applicant with regard to building in a post-Sandy environment, as well as the appraisal by former Commissioner Joseph Bruno, all assure me that this project should go forward. I also believe that the building codes revisions that were taken after Sandy clearly contemplate situations in which there will be building opportunities in flood zones, and that with the appropriate measures, those buildings should pursue. I will also say that I am persuaded by the faith expressed by this community in that very, very interesting and compelling public hearing that was conducted before us a few months ago. So for all those reasons, I believe this project should go forward. I vote yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
My apologies for being late. Between the airport and the traffic, I got hung up. But I did want to comment upon this application. First, I would like to start by saying I've been on this commission a long time, and I don't recall ever seeing a public hearing where the protagonists and those who thought otherwise did nothing but throw accolades at the applicant. I think it was a really surprisingly and happy event as far as that goes. Now, I'm an engineer by profession, structural engineer, and I have no concerns whatever regarding the ability of the structural engineer they choose, if he follows the building code correctly, should engineer a safe building. So that's off the table for me too. I've also served on various building codes committees, including writing the New York City Building Code on seismic, et cetera, some years ago. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm a plain old structural engineer. I have no experience in psychiatry or anything relative to helping the aging. But in writing codes, you have to understand that codes are written by consensus. And you can have 4, 14, 24 people, each of whom have their own thoughts on the application of the new languages. The same was true when we wrote the seismic code. Although I was not on the committee this time, I'm sure the same was true when FEMA wrote its new papers and the city of New York wrote their new papers. These are honest, dedicated people who have no agendas in general. I'm hung up, just give me a second. Okay, let's go by it. Oh yes, I know what I wanted to say. But when codes are written, because they're consensus, they're the best judgment of the profession, the engineering profession. And engineering is not pure science. Engineering is a combination of science and art. It's the artful application of scientific principles, which is another way of saying we do the best we can, but it's not pure science. So there's also always a give and take in the engineering. We have a situation here where theoretically this is a 1 in 500 year event. That means it can occur tomorrow, and it can occur in 1,000 years. We don't know. I say that to you because of what I'm about to follow up with. The issue to me is not construction. The issue to me is, as a senior citizen, and having seen many of my senior citizen friends leave me, I realize that when you're in a hospital or when you're in a nursing home, you're in an environment that is conducive to being scared, okay? You can feel comfortable for a while, but people don't like to be moved around. They come to a place where they've never been before, they're not with their family, they're not with their relatives, and you can be scared. And what scares me about it is if in fact there were an event, we got a bunch of people who are gonna be picked up and moved around, shuffled around, with the best of intentions, There's no issue over here about intentions. And I feel for them. I really do feel for them. In the past, this country has had opportunities, or maybe that's not the right word. This country has reacted negatively to certain types of operations. You've seen nuclear reactors put to bed because people were concerned about what might happen X years down the road. Public schools have been abandoned before they were opened out on the West Coast because they were found to be on a fault. And I'm looking at this site and I see one that it's gonna be tough to evacuate. With all the paperwork and with all the background, it's gonna be tough to evacuate, it's gonna be tough on those people. I've got much more to say, but I won't. But with that background commentary from me, I will abstain.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner De La Hoz.
I think a lot of folks have already mentioned that it was a thoughtful public hearing that we had, and that the operator seems to be a very good operator that is respected and liked by both staff and the residents at the existing nursing home. I share Commissioner Cantor's point that there's not really a concern that the building could withstand a future flood or a future event, but it really, to me, is also about the vulnerable population, and that the state's own working group that looked at this issue post-Sandy noted that over 40% of nursing homes are in evacuation zones, and if we were to shift this existing nursing home to Red Hook, obviously that percentage would increase. I know Red Hook, myself and many folks in the agency that I run on a day-to-day basis were first responders post-Sandy in Red Hook. And even with strong evacuation plans in place, there would be a strain on the patients and to other facilities in the case of evacuation, which is very possible in this situation. So I have the concerns about, is this the right use in this particular location? And I certainly heard and know very well the desires that Red Hook residents have to have access to ambulatory care facilities. That's a very real need that exists in the neighborhood. But for me, the concerns about this particular vulnerable population in this particular location and what it would mean is not something that I can put aside, even though I understand those things. So I'm not comfortable with this proposal, and I'm going to be voting no.
Commissioner Duet.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
I'd like to associate myself with the remarks of the chair and the vice chair, and I vote yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Throughout this public review process, my own thoughts have swung back and forth between a strong no, this makes no sense at this location, to a reluctant yes, balancing the issues in the way that the chair has articulated. I think this community gave us a remarkable showing in the public hearing. I don't think we've ever had a public hearing that was so thoughtful about very complex issues. I think Commissioner Cantor alluded to this, in which the advocates and the opponents were so respectful of each other's points of view. This is probably the hardest pure planning issue we've faced since I've been on this commission. But looking at all of the information we've collected, the additional work that the applicant has done to demonstrate that this facility can be safely operated, I vote yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Just like everyone else, I too had concerns about where the siting of this facility is. However, we did have a very intelligent public hearing. I do want to associate myself with the comments of the chair, the vice chair, and Ms. Levin, Mr. Cantor's concerns, but I do have to vote yes.
Commissioner Ortiz.
I would also like to associate myself with the comments of the chair and add that, one of the issues, I think I also have been sort of on one side or the other. It was a tremendous hearing. But, the resiliency standards really far exceed what was in place during Sandy, and we're in a different place now. And I think that's sort of an important thing to keep in mind. And, there are events that we can't control. And then there is life between those events. And one of the things that came up for me was that, family members would very much like to visit their senior residents. And that's every day for a senior resident. The need to ensure quality of life and proximity to family really is something that resonated for me when many residents mentioned that. In this case, in weighing all sides, I ultimately came to the conclusion that I would like to vote yes.
Favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 1 and 2.
Madam Secretary, is there any other business before the commission at today's special hearing?
No, Mr. Chairman.
If not, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I do want to say with respect to the previous application that I think for all of us, this was a close question for all the reasons that those who voted yes and no and abstained indicated. And it was, I think all of us would agree, a remarkable hearing and probably not one that we are likely to see soon again. And it was very, very thoughtfully conducted on all sides, and I appreciate the struggles that I and all of my fellow commissioners went through in this, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a reminder, we're now at the City Planning Commission review session part of today. Today is Monday, May 9th, and a quorum is present. So to begin the review session, we will have a presentation by Lauren George, who's the Director of Intergovernmental and Community Affairs for the Landmarks Preservation Commission, with respect to the Park Slope Historic District Extension 2, to be followed by a Brooklyn office staff member, Jonah Rogoff, who will walk us through the zoning associated with the historic district and will apprise the commission if there are any conflicts with the zoning resolution, projected public improvements or plans for the area involved. Ms. George.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you so much for being here today. The Park Slope Historic District Extension 2, outlined here in red, the 4 sections, includes 292 buildings just below Flatbush, west of Grand Army Plaza, and west of 6th Avenue in Park Slope. On October 28, 2013, the LPC held a public hearing on the proposed designation of the Park Slope Historic District Extension 2, which was item number 1. 17 people spoke in favor of this designation at the hearing, including representatives of Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz, council members Brad Lander and Steve Levin, and State Assembly member Joan Millman, as well as representatives of the New York Landmarks Conservancy, Park Slope Civic Council, Real Estate Board of New York, and the Historic Districts Council. One person testified in opposition at the hearing. The commission also received 21 letters and 84 signed petitions in favor of designation. Okay. This map, although it's a little difficult to see, I'm sorry, outlines the existing Park Slope Historic District, the extension that we did previously in 2012, and the extension 2 that we're looking at today. It's a comprehensive map of the 5 sections of all the districts there. The northern parts outlined in red, again, are what we're looking at today. The first Park Slope Historic District extension, located to the south and east on this map, was designated in 2012. And the second extension today brings the total landmark buildings in Park Slope to 2,853. The 2 most important features and factors that contributed to the growth of Park Slope during the late 19th century were transportation improvements and the development of Prospect Park, which opened in 1871. Residential development started in the area in the 1860s, close to Flatbush Avenue, as transportation improvements opened new links between Park Slope and the ferries along Brooklyn's waterfront. The district has a steady advancement of steadily developed into masonry row houses between 1870 and the early 1900s. The interplay between the natural slope of the land and the graceful rows of well-designed stone houses make the district unique, like the previously designated Park Slope districts are. This extension also includes distinguished institutional buildings designed by some of Brooklyn's leading architects. The historic district includes a catalog of mid to late 19th century styles, such as Italianate, Gothic Revival, Neo-Greek, Second Empire style, Queen Anne, Romanesque Revival, and Renaissance Revival style. There are several notable apartment buildings and institutional buildings in the district, including this Queen Anne style apartment house at 76 to 82 St. Mark's Avenue, designed by the popular Brooklyn architect Montrose Morris. And the Renaissance Revival style Carlton Club at 85 6th Avenue, as well as the medieval revival style apartment building at 47 Plaza Street West, one of the few large apartment buildings in the district. The Gothic Revival style St. Augustine's Roman Catholic Church is located at 6th Avenue and Sterling Place. The church and rectory were heard individually in 1966 and again in 1980. They've remained on the Commission's calendar since then and were part of the agency's backlog initiative under this administration. The action taken on April 12, 2016 to designate this district extension afforded the church and rectory landmark status, so these buildings were removed from the calendar of the Landmarks Preservation Commission as they fall within the boundaries of the district. This district contains some of Brooklyn's most beautiful and well-preserved residential streets, featuring a broad array of outstanding residential, institutional, and ecclesiastical structures. The neighborhood retains a cohesive character due to its consistent scale, residential character, tree-lined streets, and architectural integrity. Now, I'd like to do your part. So I would like to take any questions from commissioners, and then I believe I'm handing it over to Mr. Rogoff from Brooklyn.
Any questions? Mr. Cirillo.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Just a question, since the Park Slope Extension 1 was done in 2012, and the public hearing for 2 was in 13, why wasn't, was there consideration at one time to have done this all at the same time? Was there something further? I mean, the calendar, at least the public review calendar was very close together. So was it something new that came up and then there was a second process, or was this split for a reason? How did it get to be sort of 2 extensions with this gap of time now
Right.
existing?
My understanding is that this was because of the new administration that came on. I mean, there were certain things at the time which delayed from public hearing to the vote. And because of the backlog initiative, this was actually seen as part of that, or taken up as part of that initiative. And this administration's timelines have changed since then. So, I mean, it wasn't considered as a separate thing, but there were delays that took place.
Understood. So in 12, or the period prior to 12, when the Extension 1 portion of the area was being considered, was this area being considered too, or was it not looked at all and sort of deemed another chapter, and now we're facing that now?
My understanding is that it was slightly different in its character, and the type of buildings that it's been named for. But it was also logistical issues at the time and other designation priorities that were on the commission's calendar.
Okay, thank you.
But I will note that in between the last administration and this administration, there's a lot shorter time frame between calendaring and designation. So it's changed a lot and become more efficient, the process in general.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So Jonah will describe the zoning districts here, and will apprise the commission if there are any conflicts with the zoning resolution, projected public improvements, or plans for the area involved.
So, as Jackie just mentioned, I'll just briefly go over the current zoning and land uses. So the second historic district extension, which is outlined in red on this zoning and land use map, it's entirely located within Community District 6 and is mapped with moderate to higher density contextual districts. The bulk of the extension is within an R6B district shown here in Area 1. And then there's a sliver of R6A C1 for overlay over here, and then along Union Street in this section over here. And then there are portions within the R7A C24 overlay along Flatbush Avenue, as well as our 7B district along Sterling Place here. And then lastly, R8X is mapped along Plaza Street West. And these were all part of a rezoning that was adopted in 1993. The maximum allowable FAR ranges from 2 within R6B district to 6.02 for R8X. And then aside from residential uses, these districts also permit community facilities such as schools and houses of worship, which is consistent with the land uses in the district. And then, as I mentioned, there's a small sliver of commercial overlay that's mapped along Fifth Avenue and then along Flatbush, which permit retail uses and local services like grocery stores and restaurants. As you may know, all landmark buildings within historic districts are eligible to apply for use and bulk modifications pursuant to Section 74-711 of the zoning resolution. And then pursuant to Section 74-79, there are no transfers of development rights permitted from buildings in historic districts. And then finally, department staff is not aware of any conflicts with the zoning resolution, any projected developments or plans for, any projected public improvements or any plans for development, growth, improvement, or renewal within the historic district or surrounding area. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonah. Questions for Jonah? Ms. Efron.
Thank you. Since the rezoning 1, as we'll now call it, happened a number of years ago, were there any incidences that the department's aware of economic hardship or other issues that we should be aware of as we look for a much larger area adjacent?
I'm not aware of any economic hardships. I can speak to the the LPC held a public hearing, and there were groups of property owners, tenants that testified in support.
That's very good
But
to hear.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of.
Were there any testifying against it?
There was one person testified against it and deferred to staff from LPC.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Jonah? Okay, if not, this will go to a public hearing. Wednesday?
Yes.
Wednesday.
Thank you. So let's now move to item number 2, page 21. It's a series of proposed zoning text and zoning map amendments, special permits, and authorizations to facilitate the proposed special Hudson River Park District and the redevelopment of 550 Washington Street. Our presenter is Carolina G. Hall, who is the lead project planner for the Manhattan office. We're on item number 2, page 21.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I'm presenting 2 applications for actions that are being proposed concurrently. Together, the actions would facilitate the redevelopment of the St. John Center at 550 Washington Street in Manhattan Community District 2. The site would be developed with a mix of uses over 5 buildings and a public open space, and would include floor area from Pier 40 in the Hudson River Park. The proposed transfer of development rights would support the repair and rehabilitation of Pier 40. Pier 40 and St. John Center are located just across West Street from one another, at the intersection of West Houston Street near the Hudson Square neighborhood, which is immediately to the east. To the north is the West Village, and to the south is Tribeca. Other neighboring streets include, other major neighboring streets include Christopher Street, just to the north, Canal Street, Varick Street, and Avenue of the Americas. That's just to orient you. The actions include an application by the Department of City Planning for a zoning text amendment that would create the special Hudson River Park District. The district is proposed to include 2 sites, Pier 40 and St. John Center. The text would designate Pier 40 as a granting site and St. John Center as the receiving site in the new special district. It would also include a special permit that would allow the transfer of floor area from the granting site to the receiving site, as well as bulk modifications on the receiving site. The second application includes several actions by SJC 33 owner 2015 LLC for a zoning map amendment, a special permit pursuant to the new special Hudson River Park District for the transfer of floor area and modification of bulk requirements, 3 special permits to allow 3 accessory parking garages, 3 authorizations to allow curb cuts on a wide street, and 1 chairperson's certification to ensure payments associated with the transfer of floor area. So just a little background on Hudson River Park and Pier 40. Hudson River Park occupies approximately 550 acres in and along the Hudson River waterfront from Chambers Street to West 59th Street. The park borders Tribeca, Greenwich Village, Hudson Square, Chelsea, Hell's Kitchen, and Clinton. Among its extensive facilities, it includes a dozen completed park piers, walking paths, landscaped areas, boathouses, mooring fields, and athletic fields. The park was established in 1998 by state legislation, the Hudson River Park Act. The act stipulates the park's boundaries and operating framework and authorizes the Hudson River Park Trust to design, develop, operate, and maintain the park. The act, with a general project plan as well as zoning certification and text amendment that were adopted at the time of the park's creation, set the regulations that govern the park's use and development. The park was always conceived to contain a mixture of recreational facilities and limited commercial uses that would be compatible with the park and financially support its operations. The state owns the piers and the upland areas from Battery Park City to 35th Street. The city owns the piers and upland areas from 35th Street up to the remainder of the park 59th Street. The trust leases the property from each of these entities. The park is now approximately 70% complete, and the trust continues to actively carry out construction and planning. The act stipulates specifically what uses are permitted in the park. Residential, manufacturing, hotel, casino uses are prohibited. Park commercial uses, defined by the act to include water transportation, entertainment, retail, restaurant, and commercial recreational uses, are permitted at specific piers. Most remaining piers must include only park uses for active and passive recreation. Pursuant to the act, such park uses are not subject to zoning law. Areas designated for park commercial use are subject to zoning. Pier 40 is expressly addressed in the act as a park commercial pier that can be developed with permitted uses, including parking, and that 50% of its footprint be devoted to active and passive recreational space. Pier 40 is approximately 15 acres and served as a passenger ship terminal from 1958 through the 1960s, after which it was used as a parking garage and depot. Today, the pier has 5 acres of open-air playing fields, 3 levels of public parking with 1,900 spaces, and the offices of the trust. The fields are used by numerous local athletic programs and leagues and are an invaluable recreational resource for the community. as the Act stipulates that the park rely on its own revenues to operate and maintain its 550 acres. Revenues from Pier 40's parking operations are critical, making up 30% of the Trust's operating budget. At the outset of the park's establishment, Pier 40 was identified among the park's principal financial resources that has previously been able to contribute to a greater degree than it does today. As has been widely reported, Pier 40's piles and roof are significantly deteriorated. A 2015 engineering study found that more than half of the pier's 3,500 steel piles are in either severe condition or needing major repair. This is an image of one of the piles. Poor roof conditions have forced closure of parking areas, further limiting revenue. This is an image of an area of the pier that has been closed due to deterioration. These are as much structural concerns as they are a threat to the financial viability of the larger park. The Act does permit Pier 40 to be used for park commercial use. After 2 unsuccessful requests for proposal to redevelop the pier, and with the support of elected officials, the state amended the Act in 2013 to allow the sale of unused development rights to properties within 1 block east of the park only to the extent permitted by local zoning law. The Act further requires that any revenue generated from the sale of these development rights be used first to repair Pier 40. The zoning text amendment proposed by the Department of City Planning would establish the Special Hudson River Park District to enable the transfer of floor area from Pier 40 to the receiving development site at the St. John's Center. Pier 40 is located in the Hudson River at West Street and West Houston Street. The zoning lot, which includes land underwater, is 1.1 million square feet. The footprint of the pier structure, which is used to determine allowable floor area, is 672,328 square feet. The zoning lot is currently constructed with 2 stories and 673,000 square feet of floor area, so roughly half of its floor area is currently used. The St. John's Center or terminal site, which is across the street at 550 Washington Street, it is a 213,654 square foot lot that spans 2 partial blocks between Clarkson, West Street, Washington Street, and a line just north of Spring Street. To the south is a sanitation facility. The single tax lot and zoning lot is bisected by West Houston Street, a mapped street, and that's viewed right here. Deducting the area of the street, the zoning lot is 196,410 square feet. The existing building was constructed beginning in 1934 and served as the southern terminus of the High Line with railroad tracks entering the building on its 2nd floor. It is 4 stories and bridges over West Houston Street, which has 3 stories above it. The northern portion above West Houston Street is largely vacant. The southern portion of the building is currently occupied by back office communication uses and serves as a temporary event space. Pier 40, which is outlined in blue, and St. John's Center outlined in red, are at the juncture of several neighborhoods, Hudson Square to the east, again, the West Village to the north, and Tribeca just across Canal Street to the south. Residential uses are concentrated in the West Village and Tribeca, mainly include row houses, apartment buildings, and converted manufacturing buildings. Similarly, Hudson Square continues to see a rise in residential development. The block to the north of Clarkson Street is currently being improved with a 12-story residential building. Commercial and office uses still dominate the large lot, former manufacturing buildings in Hudson Square. The ground floor retail lines many of the main corridors, including Christopher, Hudson, Greenwich, and Canal Streets. Some manufacturing uses are still active on neighboring blocks. UPS operates a distribution facility on the super block just east of St. John's Center, and Federal Express has 2 such smaller facilities just across to the north of Clarkson Street. Directly abutting the St. John's Center to the south is a newly opened Spring Street Department of Sanitation garage with a salt shed across at Spring Street. Hudson River Park is the closest open space. The nearest section, other than Pier 40, includes Pier 45 with shade structures, seating, wood decking, and grass lawns. Other open spaces include Canal Park, just to the south of Canal Street, and the James J. Walker Park and Tony DePolito Center. Area transit includes the number 1 line Houston Street subway station, several bus lines, and water taxi from Christopher Street Pier. The Hudson River Greenway, a bicycle route, extends along the length of Manhattan's west side. The entrance to the Holland Tunnel is located near Hudson and Canal Streets. The zoning districts in the area are equally varied. This map illustrates the proposed districts over the development site. But currently, the site is mapped with an M15 district above West Houston Street, which extends to the north and east, and an M24 district below West Houston Street, which again extends to the south. M15 permits 5 FAR of commercial and manufacturing uses, 6.5 for some community facility uses. M24 also permits 5 FAR, is more restrictive with respect to some uses. For example, a hotel is not permitted in M24 districts. Bulk in both districts is subject to the sky exposure plane above a height of 85 feet from the street line. M23 is mapped over Pier 40 and extends to the north and south along the Hudson River. It allows 2 FAR of commercial and manufacturing uses. Buildings in these zoning districts, many still serving a manufacturing use, such as shipping, distribution, and vehicle repair, are generally low-rise, not exceeding 60 feet, and are typically built out to their permitted floor area between 4 and 5 FAR. The Special Hudson Square District, just to the east of the development site, was adopted in 2013, was created with the recognition that a formerly manufacturing area could harmoniously balance residential, commercial, and industrial uses. The underlying zoning district is M16, which permits 10 FAR. The special district permits 12 FAR with the provision of inclusionary housing. Bulk regulations are consistent with former printing loft buildings. Required street walls are generally high, up to 150 feet on wide streets and 125 feet on narrow streets. Maximum building heights are 290 feet on wide streets and 185 on narrow streets. In sub-area A, which is just off this map, at the intersection of the Avenue of Americas and Canal Street at Duarte Square, the maximum building height is 430 feet. Buildings in the Special Hudson Square District immediately east of the project area that occupy full blocks, including these, are between 9 and 16 FAR and between 180 and 260 feet tall. SJC 33 owner 2015 LLC proposes to redevelop the St. John Center with 5 buildings totaling 1,711,000 square feet or 8.7 FAR with 1,289,000 square feet of residential floor area, 200,000 square feet of of retail and event space, 222,000 square feet of office or hotel, an elevated public open space, and 772 accessory parking spaces. The program includes 200,000 square feet of floor area proposed to be transferred from Pier 40. In sum, the applicant proposes 328,700 square feet of permanently affordable housing, which would make up 25.5% of all residential floor area across the development. Additionally, the applicant expects that 30% of all units would be permanently affordable. The single zoning lot has been separated into 3 distinct sites. The north site, which is bounded by Clarkson Street, West Houston Street, and Washington Street. The center site, which extends for 406 feet to the south of West Houston Street, and the south site, which abuts the sanitation garage. Beginning with the north site, it's proposed to include 2 buildings. The northwest building fronting largely on West Street, Clarkson, West Houston Streets, and the northeast building fronting primarily on Washington Street. The northwest building is proposed to include 450,000 square feet of residential floor area and 100,000 square feet of retail space on the building's lower floors. The building's main entrance is sited on Clarkson Street, and retail is accessed from West Houston Street. The building's street walls would rise between 91 and 127 feet, and then taper to 1 tower of 430 feet closer to West Street and 1 tower of 360 feet closer to Washington Street. The building is designed to graduate mass vertically to 2 tower tops of no more than 50 by 50 feet. The northeast building on Washington Street, the second building on the north side, is 110,000 square feet in area and 175 feet tall. All the flooring in the building is proposed to be affordable to senior residents with incomes up to 80% of AMI. The applicant additionally proposes a 236-space accessory garage accessed by a 22-foot curb cut on West Street beneath the north site. At the southern boundary of the north site, the applicant proposes to repurpose the existing rail structure, which is currently constructed over above West Houston Street. It would be open to the sky and transformed into an elevated garden with generous 20-foot-high arcades, pictured here, both on the north and the south sides. The 20,750 square foot public open space would be accessible from a stair and elevator to the public on two corners of West Houston Street, and would feature planted areas, seating, and walkways. The center site is roughly 100,000 square feet in area and extends from West Houston Street for 406 feet south. It's also proposed to include two large residential buildings. The Center West building fronts on West Street and would include 300,000 square feet of residential floor area and 33,000 square feet of retail. The main entrance is on West Houston Street. The street walls rise between 102 and 114 feet. The highest portion of the building is a 320-foot tower at the southern end of the building. The Center East building fronts on Washington and West Houston Streets and includes 429,000 square feet of residential floor area with 27,000 square feet of retail proposed in the building space. The street walls are between 188 and 209 feet. The building rises to 240 feet across. The primary residential entrance, which would be right here at the corner of West Houston Street and pictured here, has been located at the northernmost corner to concentrate pedestrian activity away from the operations of the UPS facility just across the street. Of the residential floor area on the center site, the applicant proposes 218,700 square feet to be affordable to households with incomes of 60% and 130% AMI. In sum, the affordable floor area would comprise 30% of the residential floor area across the center site. Separating the two center site buildings is a landscape courtyard, 60 feet in width, between the east and west buildings. The applicant additionally proposes a cellar-level accessory garage with 372 spaces accessed at the southern end of the east building. To apportion the single zoning lot and introduce circulation to the site plan, the applicant proposes a through-block driveway between Washington and West Streets that would allow access to the south site building, as well as the lobbies of the Center West and Center East buildings. The driveway is designed at a single elevation with vehicular and pedestrian areas defined by changes in surface texture and plantings. The south site is 40,660 square feet in area and borders the Department of Sanitation garage to the south. The building is proposed to include 222,000 square feet of either office or hotel space, or a combination of both, 40,000 square feet of retail or event space. A hotel on the site would rise to a maximum height of 240 feet on a low full coverage base. And an office building would likely be lower than 240 feet with larger floor plates throughout the height of the building. The envelope has been designed to allow both options. On the ground level, the commercial building is separated from the sanitation garage by a service alley that will be used for loading and valet access, should the south site building be a hotel. The cellar level accessory garage is also proposed with 164 spaces and would be accessed from a 22-foot curb cut on West Street. The Department of City Planning proposes an amendment to the zoning resolution to establish Article 8, Chapter 9, the Special Hudson River Park District, which would encompass Pier 40 as a granting site and St. John's Center as a receiving site. Separately, the private applicant is seeking actions to develop the St. John's Center as described. The Special Hudson River Park District aims to facilitate the repair and rehabilitation of piers, bulkheads, and infrastructure within the Hudson River Park and facilitate their maintenance and development through the transfer of development rights within the Special Hudson River Park District. It also aims to promote an appropriate range of uses that complements Hudson River Park, and to the extent housing is included, to serve residents of varied income levels. As is consistent with all special districts, the special district also aims to promote the most desirable use of land and development in the area. The text includes a special permit under the proposed section 8921, which enables the commission to permit the transfer of floor area from the granting site, Pier 40, shown here, or designated as A1, to the receiving site, the St. John's Center, designated as A2. as well as bulk modifications on the receiving site. Given that St. John's Center spans 2 blocks, the proposed text would maintain its status as a single zoning lot, with the stipulation that West Houston Street not generate floor area and be subject to height and setback requirements. The special permit would also provide flexibility to allow the distribution of floor area irrespective of zoning district boundaries. The proposed text anticipates that with the special permit, the owner of the receiving site may concurrently seek a zoning map amendment to allow additional uses or greater floor area. The proposed text conditions the effectiveness of the new zoning districts on the special permit. That is, absent the construction pursuant to the special permit and with the transferred floor area, the receiving site is restricted to the manufacturing zoning district regulations that are in place today. There are requirements and conditions of the special permit. The Hudson River Park Trust must submit a letter to the commission identifying improvements and stating that the funds associated with the transfer of floor area, in addition to any other funds, are sufficient to complete the identified improvements. The transferred floor area may be no greater than 20% of the underlying floor area permitted on the receiving site. The granting site and park improvements must be in the same community district as or within 1/2 mile of the receiving site, and very significantly, if the development on the receiving site includes residential floor area, the program must include affordable housing in accordance with mandatory inclusionary housing. The grant of the special permit is contingent on a set of findings with respect to the furtherance of the Hudson River Park's repair, maintenance, and development, and on the receiving site, an improved site plan and building design, complementary uses, provision of light and air to surrounding streets, and the appropriateness of bulk modifications in relation to park improvements, and the ability of the project to support the objectives of the inclusionary housing program. The Special Hudson River Park District also creates 2 chairperson certifications to ensure that no building permits or certificates of occupancy can be issued until the chair has certified that the receiving site owner and the trust have executed a payment schedule and that payments are maintained in accordance with that schedule. The private applicant also proposes several actions, including the zoning map amendment, a special permit pursuant to the New Hudson River Park Trust Act, text, a special permit for additional parking for 3 parking facilities, 3 authorizations for curb cuts, as well as a chairperson certification. The St. John's Center is currently in 2 zoning districts, again, M15 to the north of West Houston Street and M24 to the south, both permit 5 FAR for commercial and manufacturing uses, and Pier 40 is in an M23 zoning district. That zoning district designation is not proposed to be changed. The proposed zoning map amendment would include St. John's Center in 3 zoning districts, C64 on the north site, which permits 10 FAR in residential uses, C63 over the center site, which permits 7.52 as well as residential uses, and M15 over the south site, which would remain, of course, a manufacturing district of 5 FAR, but does permit hotel. Both the St. John's Center and Pier 40 would be mapped in the newly created Special Hudson River Park District to designate the granting and receiving sites and make them eligible to be able to transfer and receive floor area. On the St. John's Center site, the zoning configuration responds to the context of adjacent streets. The highest density district, the C63, is proposed nearest other residential development to the north and corresponds in permitted density to the Special Hudson Square District, which permits 12, whereas C64 permits 10 FAR. The center site, C63, allows 7.52 that decreases towards the lower level M15 district on the south site with the neighboring UPS and sanitation facilities. Absent the floor area proposed to be transferred from Hudson River Park, the aggregate density on the site would be 7.7 FAR under the proposed districts. The density is consistent with the Special Tribeca Mixed Use District, just to the south, which permits 7.2 FAR. With the transferred floor area, the site is proposed to include 8.7 FAR, less than the 12 FAR permitted in the Special Hudson Square District. As noted, the new zoning districts, if granted, would be ineffective absent the use of the special permit. The private applicant seeks a special permit pursuant to Section 8921 in the Special Hudson River Park text proposed by the Department of City Planning. The special permit would allow the transfer of 200,000 square feet From Pier 40 to the St. John Center, Pier 40 is zoned an M23 district with 2 FAR and 1,344,656 square feet of floor area, of which 671,582 square feet are unused today. 200,000 square feet constitutes 13.2% of the floor area permitted by the underlying regulations on the receiving site. The transfer floor area would enable improvements to Pier 40, in support of which the trust has provided a letter to the commission. Under the special permit, the applicant also seeks modification of bulk requirements. In terms of height, the proposed C64, C63, and M15 districts allow heights regulated by the sky exposure plane. On all 3 sites, the proposed buildings envelopes penetrate the sky exposure plane as measured from the zoning lots bounding streets, including West Houston Street. The sample waiver drawing is cut looking west. The north site is at the right end of the screen, and the cut is actually close to West Street, so at the eastern end of the site. The building's highest projections require waiver to allow heights of 430 and 360 feet on the north site, 320 feet on the center site, and although this particular waiver doesn't show the extent of the height here, 240 feet on the south site. There's another example of a waiver diagram. Again, looking in the same direction, this is the north site, but this section is taken actually closer to Washington Street. The tower portions of buildings are located on bases that correspond in height to adjacent Hudson Square loft buildings. The development site's location on a wide street, West Street, and the Hudson River affords the opportunity to distribute mass vertically and provide separations among towers. A waiver of street walls is also sought. In C64, C63, and M15 districts, all districts permit a maximum base height of 85 feet. Adjacent Special Hudson Square district regulations allow street walls of up to 150 feet on wide streets and 125 on narrow streets. The north site is proposed to include buildings with street walls of between 115 and 129 feet. The center site would include street walls of between 102 and 209 feet, and the south site has street walls of 112 feet. Many of these street walls incorporate lower recesses to articulate the facade and match the character of nearby lofts. The street walls are also proposed to reflect the height of adjacent structures like the sanitation garage to the south. The center site is proposed to be zoned in a C63 district where height factor regulations consider floor area, building height, and open space to encourage a tower in the park with smaller footprints and taller building heights. The center site is proposed to be constructed with 7.52 FAR plus the transferred floor area. Based on this proposed floor area, height factor calculations would permit a lot coverage of 56,000 square feet, whereas the center site buildings would have a lot coverage of 67,000 square feet. As shown here, therefore, a waiver of a modification of height of lot coverage requirements is sought. The south site building proposed in an M15 district is designed not to include a 40-foot rear yard that would be required in the middle of the block, as shown here in the shaded area. The required rear yard, the rear yard requirement is suitable for a typical street context to provide separation from neighboring buildings. However, the site plan and building design include separation from neighboring buildings here. Typically, special permits that are not vested expire after 4 years. Given the size and complexity of the development, existing site conditions that will require substantial work before foundation is constructed, as well as current tenancies on the site, the applicant asks that the commission grant the special permit for a period of 10 years rather than 4 years. The applicant requests 3 special permits pursuant to the Manhattan Core regulations for 3 separate accessory parking facilities totaling 772 spaces. A 236 space below grade garage that would be accessed from a 22-foot curb cut on the north site, a 372 space garage that would be accessed from the center east building on the center site, and a 164 space accessory garage that would also be accessed from West Street from a 22-foot curb cut. These special permits are sought for predominantly residential development, where the commission may find that trends in residential construction, available parking in the surrounding area would support the provision of additional parking. The Manhattan Core analysis required as part of the application determined that within 1/3 mile of the 1/3 mile study area between 2005 and 2015, and including the projected development, the residential growth parking ratio is -7.7. That is, there's been a proportionate decline in parking spaces to residential development in the area. The introduction of residential development through the proposed project, plus the proposed 772 spaces, would bring the residential growth parking ratio to 20%, which is a proportion of parking that is recommended not be exceeded. The private applicant seeks 3 authorizations pursuant to section 13441 to allow curb cuts on West Street, a wide street at 3 locations. Again, to access the north side garage, one in order to be able to access the through block driveway along West Street, and another 22-foot curb cut to be able to access the south side garage. Finally, the applicant is also seeking a chairperson certification pursuant to the new Special Hudson River Park District, Section 8921, to ensure that building permits may only be issued by the Department of Buildings once a payment schedule associated with the transfer of floor area has been jointly executed by the owner of the receiving site and the trust. So with respect to environmental review, the DEIS identified significant adverse impacts with respect to vehicular traffic, open space, construction, air quality, and noise. The traffic analysis identified the potential for significant adverse impacts at up to 11 intersections for the proposed project. Unmitigated impacts remain at up to 5 locations. Any additional mitigation will be explored in consultation with the Department of Transportation between the draft and the final EIS. The proposed actions would additionally reduce the total and active open space ratios. Potential mitigation measures will be explored between the draft and final EIS with the Department of Parks and Recreation. Equally, the potential for construction, air quality, and noise will also be further explored between the draft and final EIS. In summary, the proposed text amendment by the Department of City Planning and actions by the private applicant will help enable the repair of Pier 40, a critical asset to Hudson River Park, will revitalize a large and prominent waterfront site near Hudson Square, and will contribute to the diversity of the city's housing stock.
Thank you very much, Carolina. That was extremely well done and comprehensive. Questions? No questions. That was really a remarkable performance. Mr. Cantor.
I'm not gonna let her get away that easy. Good show. Question, please. What is the tallest buildings immediately east of the highway the current? I'm trying to learn what these 2 towers, particularly the 2 tallest towers, how they relate to anything else along the waterfront.
Right. I'll go to you.
Yeah, that would be a good slide.
Okay. So currently, the tallest buildings, I believe this building here in the Special Hudson Square District rises to 260 feet. The highest portion of the buildings proposed would rise to 430 feet. 430 feet is also the proposed or the permitted height at Duarte Square in the Special Hudson Square District, which is located on Canal Street and Avenue of the Americas, 2 wide streets. And so similarly here, West Street is a wide street, also located, the location here is also on the water. And so it affords an opportunity to be able to locate a taller building.
Do either of these sites, the Canal Street site or this one, have they ever undergone shadow studies?
Yes, as part of the environmental review for this project, shadow studies were required, and I imagine at the time of the Special Hudson Square rezoning, there would have been studies as well of the permitted height at that particular location.
Indeed, there were.
Thank you.
Ms. Ortiz?
I try to let Ann go first usually, but.
I will.
I wanted to just clarify my understanding of, the total amount of square footage that's available for sale or purchase. You had mentioned that's about, what's the total? It's about 600,000 square feet that's available?
670,000 square
Okay.
feet is unused on Pier 40
Is
today.
unused. 200 of which is being sold.
That's right,
So then over 400,000 is left.
that's right.
This special permit area is only defined as this site, correct?
That's right.
So we have, significant additional square footage that has no place to go right now. So it's one developer, one site where this can go. How was the value of this determined? How did they get to the $100 million dollar assumption around valuation for the square footage?
Okay. Well, before I respond to the value, with regards to the availability of floor area and locations, the trust has represented that it is their intention now to sell the 200,000 square feet and be able to retain the remaining 470,000 square feet. So the 200,000 square feet is what they've identified as being appropriate for sale right now. In terms of other sites that might receive the area, and especially with the stipulation in the text within 1/2 mile and within the same community district, there are no immediately available soft sites. And as you pointed out, the text right now addresses just Pier 40 and just the receiving site. So there's no potential under the proposed set of actions to be able to transfer floor area, and in fact, a future transfer, even to this site, if this site where St. John's were seeking more floor area in the future, would involve a whole new ULURP. With regards to the valuation, the trust did commission an appraisal. Additionally, the trust did, as the 2015 engineering study that I cited earlier, which discusses the condition of the piles, identified the piles as needing $100 million in repair. And so the trust, at the outset, the trust had identified that it would be $100 million that they would need in order to be able to do those repairs.
It seems interesting that the need met so nice and squarely with the sale.
Well, it actually didn't. The final appraisal came in at $74 million, and the additional $26 million on top of that is, in effect, a contribution from the developer to the trust.
Okay,
So
that's helpful
that's,
to clarify. One question, I'm just wondering to the degree to which, maybe this is a question for the commission, but how usual is it to ask for an extension in the permit? Is there's precedent for that?
There is. I mean, it has. I don't know of the kind of immediately last case, but there have been special permits issued for more than 4 years, and it's at the commission's discretion.
we'll get to
we'll
the commissioners
clarify.
list.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin and then Ms. Efron.
Thank you, Carolina. Now I know where you've been all these months. Putting together this incredibly complicated, calibrated machine, and the architecture probably matches the complication of putting all this together. And there are a ton of details that we are going to dig into, I think, as it goes through the public review process. So I guess I'd like to serve up 3 questions. One is how it came about that senior housing is included here. Was that a city initiative? Is there a developer chosen for it? Is there an operator chosen for it?
Sure. So the private applicant included the senior affordable housing component from very early on in the project. Of course, that aligns very well with the city's objective as well, to provide more housing for seniors, especially housing that's affordable. There's currently no operator selected or that's been identified.
Okay.
But certainly, the senior housing is a significant part of the proposal.
To come. Secondly, I'm curious about the funny little stubby open space over Hudson Street. And I realized it looked sort of more odd on paper. I realize it really evokes the High Line at this location. So maybe it does make some design sense, but I'm curious about how effective that's going to be as publicly accessible open space. Obviously, they've provided a way to get there, but it is a little bit isolated from where anything, any passersby will be. So maybe that doesn't even need a response, but I think it's important for us to figure out as this goes through public review, how we can make that the best public space, how we can make it an attraction and not an afterthought.
Sure. I will say that there is a large population of office users already in Hudson Square, and they're just across the street. And of course, this is, in terms of getting to Pier 40, this is West Houston Street is the major pedestrian corridor to be able to get there. And additionally, the applicant has proposed to have retail line the majority of both sides of the upper portion of the elevated garden in order to be able to kind of make the two mutually compatible and activate both.
Okay. Well, I hope we can understand a little more about that as we go through the process. So the big question I'd like to leave you with has to do with parking. And it seems to me that this, so we're plotting 772 spaces here, which seems like a whole lot of parking spaces, especially considering that there are 1,900 spaces immediately across the street on Pier 40. And in previous parking applications, we've had conversations about the residential growth calculation. This one really makes it vividly clear. There's no mention, there's nothing in the growth calculation that even requires you to take into account that there are 1,900 parking spaces across the street. So I have a big question in my mind for this review process about whether this degree of parking is appropriate at this location. Is that something that has been the subject of discussion as this has evolved?
Well, the 1,900, as far as I understand, the 1,900 spaces, as long as they are DCA licensed, will have been factored into the parking analysis. So mathematically, they do account for an amount of space, number of spaces that are available within the study area now, and still the amount that was arrived at in terms of the residential growth parking ratio was negative 7.7. And so the number of proposed spaces, 772, brings that ratio up to the 20%. And that's what is being proposed. There's also a significant number of residential units and a significant amount of officer hotel being proposed here too. And so naturally, that those parking spaces would be accessory to those uses.
I expect we'll hear a lot more about parking as we go. So thank you.
Ms. Efron, then Ms. Delauze, and Ms. Kent.
Thank you, and thank you for a really comprehensive presentation. You must be a little exhausted. I, too, share Commissioner Levin's concern about the parking, particularly when you take out the elder citizens who are going to be in this large complex who probably will not have cars, and the affordable units, which at least we have been demonstrated during the MIH and CQA, are less likely to have cars. So I'm wondering what the ratio is of units to parking spaces, and that, I imagine, will be sorted out as we go through this. But I guess my primary concern, or I think there's a real opportunity for this to be a gateway to Hudson River Park and Pier 40, and the design very much plays into a gateway versus some sort of a fortress that really prevents access. And I have several questions that I hope can be addressed along the way. One is the High Line type of bridge, because it really, it looked as if it was 3, which I didn't understand from this, but when you have the bird's eye view, it looks as if there are 3 trestles, and they only span the width of the street. So while there might be a large office population during the day, I'm wondering what the security and feel and lighting would be in the after hours, particularly in the winter, so that that doesn't become a place of danger as opposed to, again, a welcoming part of that pedestrian neighborhood. And similarly, the driveway, will that have pedestrian access as well, or is that only for cars?
It will
'Cause
have
wasn't
pedestrian.
stated specifically. Okay, and again, what the condition and the conditions for pedestrians are of that. And then finally, I haven't read anything about it being so close to the water and whether or not there's any flood issue here. Is it slightly elevated? Is that why that hasn't come up? Or does the Pier 40 itself provide a barrier for this?
The site itself, the entire development site is in the 100-year flood zone. And so the developer recognizes that there will need to be mitigation in place. And the architect has designed the building to be dry flood-proofed, particularly for commercial uses. And as far as I understand it, lobbies, residential spaces will be elevated. And so the building design will have to meet all the requirements of Appendix G.
So if that's the case, as I suspected it would be, some sense or renderings of the pedestrian experience, particularly in that question whether it's fortress or gateway, would really, I think, go a long way here.
Ms. Deluz.
Carolina, I join with others in saying great presentation. I'm wondering if you could share, if you have any information about what informed the choices in terms of the AMI levels in this particular project. Obviously, this is a project that could go much deeper.
Right, so the AMIs, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around the AMIs. The developer proposed AMIs and has also consulted with HPD, and so those are the AMIs that have been arrived at.
Was there any community input thus far into them?
There hasn't been thus far.
Let me just say, I think that both to the question of AMIs and to the question of senior housing, while obviously this has not gone through the public review process yet, I do think the developer here has been aware of communities' interests in what populations of affordability it should serve. I mean, as you know, the amount of affordable housing in the West Village neighborhood is not great, and so this does provide an unusual opportunity to serve a variety of different needs. So I think that's what the developer was responding to in this particular instance. Mr. Cantor.
Thank you. With regard to the senior housing, does the developer have a timeline for construction of the various components?
There is no, so the developer can construct the sites in any sequence. There is no sequence that's been cemented right now. The affordable, any affordable unit, whether it's senior or the affordable units on the center site that would be within the mixed buildings, need to be provided before the developer can seek certificates of occupancy for any market units. So if the north site was developed first, the senior housing would have to be in place before a C of O can be sought for the northwest building.
So it would be on the early part of the timeline?
If the north site was developed first, the senior housing would have to be in place first.
And if the north site were not developed first, then what?
Then if the center or south sites were developed first, the senior housing, again, would come later, but would have to be constructed before.
Well, based upon what you've told us earlier, with the request for an extension from the 4 years to 10 years, we're talking about probably a 12, 13-year build-out, at least.
The build year, as identified in the EIS, is 2024.
Okay. Okay. Then why is he asking for a 10-year?
Well, the 10-year is the conventional amount of time that the commission, if it extends, if the special permit is granted with an extension beyond 4 years, the 10 years becomes sort of the default extension. So at any point within that.
My obvious concern is that if the development of the site is such that the senior housing is delayed, that would be of concern. And it seems to me that we'd like to learn more about the plans, the anticipation, and perhaps even include language if and when we ultimately approve the request.
Any other questions for Carolina? Yes, Ms. Efron.
I forgot something, I'm sorry. The papers mentioned a supermarket. I don't know if it was used as an example or if there's an intention to put in a supermarket in this site.
That's right. The private applicant does intend to locate a supermarket on the site that would be available, obviously, to the development as well as nearby office workers, and they would likely be located on the north side.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is certified, and I do want to commend the staff, particularly Carolina and Edith Suchen and Eric Botsford and others who've worked on this, as noted by Commissioner Levin and others. This is a very complex endeavor. It still is starting its public review, not ending its public review, but getting it to this point has been a real tribute to them. So, thanks.
So let's now advance to item number 3, page 157, proposed zoning map amendment to establish a C15 overlay within an existing R7A district to facilitate the continued occupancy of an existing supermarket. Now, presenter is Beverly Jimenez Talavera on item number 3, page 157.
It goes from the huge to the tiny.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Chairman Weisbrod. The applicant, 1968 Second Avenue Realty LLC, is requesting a zoning map amendment from an R7A to an R7A C15 zoning district. The proposed zoning map amendment would correct 2 zoning issues. The first, it would end an existing nonconformance of commercial space by bringing the use into conformance with the extension of the C15 commercial overlay from 100 feet, from a 100-foot boundary line to a 155-foot boundary line. The second, it would also bring the existing loading dock into compliance with the zoning resolution, relocating the boundary line of the overlay from the same distance. The site is located on the east side of Second Avenue, between East 101st and East 102nd Street. The site is also situated on part of lots 1 and 6 on block 1673. On site currently is a 2-story commercial building with a mezzanine, a cellar, and loading dock, which is located on East 101st Street. The second floor of the building contains vacant office space, and there is a supermarket on the ground floor which uses the mezzanine, the cellar, and the loading dock. As you can see, the loading dock is on the lower left-hand side of the picture, and is currently located outside of the commercial overlay, along with a portion of the entire building, which is outside of the commercial overlay. The subject zoning lot was originally comprised of 5 separate zoning lots. Each lot was formerly occupied by a commercial building. The tax lots were merged by the recording of a zoning lot declaration in 1998. The pre-existing building was demolished, and the building currently at the site was built in 1994. The current applicant didn't own the property at the time of the prior building the current applicant did not own the building during demolition or during construction, but purchased the building as it currently exists in 2005. Lot 1 is completely occupied by 1968 Second Avenue. And this is Second Avenue, of course. And this is 101st Street. The building is 34 feet 6 inches tall and contains approximately 29,990 square feet, and the loading dock is located 125 feet from Second Avenue. The commercial overlay only extends 100 feet into the block. So the red line represents where it currently is located. The extension of the C15 commercial overlay would extend that overlay 55 feet into an R7A zoning district and give the loading dock the required 30 feet distance from a residential district, and it will cover the remaining 25 feet of the two-story building which is currently located beyond the commercial overlay. Because the proposed zoning map amendment is sought only to bring the existing building into conformance and compliance, the proposed action is not intended to result into any new development or enlargement of the building on the site.
Questions? More questions on this than on St. John's. All right, I'm going to start with Ms. Delauze.
It's a short one. I just have a lot of supermarket on my mind lately. Do we happen to know what the remaining length of lease is for the existing supermarket operator? And is there any thought to, if this were to move forward, ensuring that the supermarket use would continue?
Well, the supermarket's been here for 11 years. I don't know if there is any thought to changing the use, but as far as my knowledge today, I would say no to that.
That would be a concern.
Ms. Levin.
Yes, Beverly, I'm just curious about how this one came to light. And it's baffling to me that DOB can apparently have no record of a new building permit. How does this sort of stuff happen, and how did you find out about it?
Well, it came across my desk, and I inherited this project.
It's a very cosmic question that you're asking.
I realize, but we're in the, this is the Department of Cosmic Planning, right?
To answer your question, I'll have to look into it further.
Okay.
We'll ask the applicant.
Any other questions for Beverly? If not, this is certified. We'll be hearing more as the days and months progress.
Thanks, Beverly. Let's now move to item number 4, page 173, proposed zoning map amendment to change M districts to a residential district, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area for the provision of affordable housing in Community District 1, the Bronx. And our presenter is Michael Parkinson from the Bronx office. Item number 4, page 173.
Good afternoon, Cosmic Commissioners. The East 147th Street rezoning is a zoning map amendment requesting a change from M12 and M13 to R7X and R7X/C14 on portions, or on all or portions of 17 lots on 4 blocks in the Bronx, Community Board 1. MIH will also be mapped as a component of the application, with the applicant recommending both options 1 and 2, which would require either 25% of a project's units to be made affordable to families making an average of 60% AMI, or 30% of a project's units to be made affordable to families making an average of 80% AMI. The rezoning is being undertaken to facilitate the development of a 100% affordable residential project, the details of which I will describe shortly. The project area is located in Community District 1 within the Mott Haven neighborhood located in the South Bronx. The East 147th Street rezoning would impact 17 lots in a geography generally bounded by Southern Boulevard to the west, Austin Place to the east, along the northern and southern block fronts of 147th Street. The applicant-owned site is located in the northeasternmost portion of the rezoning area, here dotted with a red outline. Southern Boulevard and East 149th Street are the major thoroughfares bordering the project area. Bruckner Boulevard and the elevated Bruckner Expressway are located southeast of the project area. The 6 train has local stops at East 149th Street and East 144th Street along Southern Boulevard. And the buses in the vicinity include the BX19, which runs east along 149th Street and Southern Boulevard, and the BX17, which operates along East 149th Street and Prospect Avenue. To give a sense of local neighborhood context, the rezoning area is located just north and west of the Port Morris Industrial Business Zone, which, as you will see in a moment, is a contributing factor in the industrial character of many of the surrounding land uses. Additionally, the rezoning area is located only a few blocks from the regionally serving St. Mary's Park and about a mile from the commercial and entertainment heart of the South Bronx, known as the Hub. There is also the New Visions Charter High School, in close proximity. And finally, the 3-phase and over 400-unit Crossroads Plaza project, which is an affordable housing project associated with the 2012 rezoning to R8X, is located across Southern Boulevard. Generally speaking, the surrounding land uses are a mix of light industrial and manufacturing uses to the east and to the south of the rezoning area, and residential and commercial uses to the north and to the west of the rezoning area. South of the rezoning area is occupied with manufacturing and storage buildings ranging in height from 1 to 6 stories within M12 and M13 zoning districts. In addition, the area contains several vacant lots, 2 small residential buildings of 3 stories, and these buildings are located on the corner of East 145th and Timpson, surrounded by vacant lots and 1-story garages. To the west, several 6 to 8-story apartment buildings line Union Avenue between 149th and 147th Street. North of the project area are M12 and R71 districts with a C14 overlay along Prospect Avenue and Southern Boulevard. This area contains 1-story commercial buildings, a funeral home, a house of worship, and 4 and 5-story mixed buildings. Additionally, a 14-story residential building is currently under construction on the corner of 149th and Prospect Avenue, the project I previously referred to as Crossroads Plaza. The existing zoning within the rezoning area is M12 and M13. Currently, M12 districts allow the development of industrial and commercial uses up to 2.0 FAR, and the M13 district allows these same uses up to 5.0 FAR. Each district allows some community facility uses up to 4.8 and 5.6 FAR, respectively. Neither district requires side yards, but both require 20-foot rear yards. M12 districts allow front walls of 60 feet or 4 stories, whichever is less, before requiring stepping back in accordance with the sky exposure plane. And the M13 district allows front walls of 85 feet or 6 stories, whichever is less, before requiring stepping back in accordance with the sky exposure plane. Each district requires parking, the amount of which depends on the use, ranging from one space per 300 square feet to 1 space per 1,000 square feet. The proposed RX7 district would permit residential uses up to 6.0 FAR in inclusionary housing districts, as is proposed here, with a height limit of 145 feet. 1 parking space is required for every 0.5 units, with no parking requirement for income-restricted units. The R7X district would not impose a requirement for a side yard, but would require a 30-foot rear yard. A proposed C14 district is proposed along Southern Boulevard and would allow neighborhoods serving commercial uses, and within the R7X district, a maximum of 2.0 FAR. The overlay is not associated with the application's proposed development project. The proposed development site is a combination of 4 tax lots totaling just over 24,000 square feet, on 147th Street's northern frontage between Timpson and Austin Place. The site is currently zoned M12, and the site currently contains a one-story parking garage and surface parking totaling approximately 50 spaces. And additionally, there are two lots of the development site that contain small unoccupied residential buildings. The applicant is proposing a 12-story residential building that will rise to a maximum height of 125 feet and totaling 164,000 square feet of development in compliance with the R7X district's permitted 6.0 FAR. To facilitate the development of the project, the applicant is utilizing the 4% low-income housing tax credits bond cap and is seeking subsidies from New York City Department of Housing and Preservation and Development and the New York City Housing Development Corporation. The applicant proposes to construct 165 affordable dwelling units under HPD's Extremely Low and Low Income Affordability, or ELA program. The proposal includes 25 below-grade parking spaces. The ground floor of the proposed development will consist of a lobby and residential amenities such as a community room and laundry facilities. And typical floor plans include a mix of dwelling unit sizes that range between studio units and 3-bedroom units. The proposed development consists of 3 main vertical sections that create a continuous street wall and rise incrementally in 3 level changes between floors 1 through 6, 6 through 9, and 9 through 12, and peaks at the southwest corner of the development site. The proposed development would have a base height of 85 feet, with floors 6 through 12 stepping back from the building's northern edge, and floors 9 through 12 stepping back from the building's eastern edge. In closing, the applicant seeks a rezoning of the project area from M12 and M13 to R7X, and M13 to R7X, and M12 and M13 to R7X/C14. In addition to the proposed mapping action, a zoning text amendment is being proposed to designate the project area as a mandatory inclusionary housing area. The proposed project is recommending the application of options 1 and 2. The proposed C14 commercial overlay along Southern Boulevard will allow a continuous strip of commercial uses to serve nearby residents extending from existing commercial uses north of East 147th Street along the east side of Southern Boulevard. The proposed zoning map change is necessary because current zoning does not permit residential uses. And finally, the proposed overlay will allow neighborhood-serving retail to locate along Southern Boulevard.
Thank you very, very much, Michael. And questions? Ms. Delauze, and then Ms. Efron.
Can you tell us a little bit more about MLK Plaza LLC? Who's involved?
Sure. The applicant team is a development group, Radson Development, and they have been engaging in conversations with HPD and HDC to put their proposal together. And as I mentioned, they are seeking to utilize the ELA program under HPD financing, and they're hoping to close that in December.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Efron.
Hi, my question's about the IBZ. If you could just show on the map exactly where it is. It's south, right?
Sure. Yeah. If you see here, the purple hatch represents the industrial business zone, the Port Morris IBZ.
Great, so it's right up against it, which seems like could be a really good opportunity for employers and also for prospective residents of the new development. I'd be curious what Business Services thinks about the relationship between them and how we prevent speculative acquisition of buildings within the IBZ as the R7X comes up right against it going forward.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Any other questions for Michael? Not? Certified. Thank you, Mike.
Commissioners, item number 5 is being laid over. So our next item is item number 6, page 205, 141 Willoughby Street, which involves proposed zoning map and zoning text amendments and a city map amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area, map of C66 district, to facilitate a development with office, retail, and residential uses, including affordable housing. So we're on item number 6, page 205, and our presenter is Alex Summers.
Good afternoon. This is an application by 385 Gold Property Investors LLC, also known as Savannah Equities, to rezone a C61 district and a portion of a C64 district into a C66 district within the special downtown Brooklyn district. and zoning text amendments to designate a mandatory inclusionary housing area and establish the C66 district within the special downtown Brooklyn district. Also, in a concurrent application by the New York City Economic Development Corporation and the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development to demap a portion of Flatbush Avenue extension. Together, these applications would facilitate the development of a new 372,000 square foot mixed retail, office, and residential development located in downtown Brooklyn, Community District 2. The proposed project area is located in the middle of downtown Brooklyn, New York City's third largest central business district, and Brooklyn's burgeoning tech triangle, which includes downtown Brooklyn, Dumbo, and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The site, 141 Willoughby Street, is located on a triangular block bound by the 120-foot wide Flatbush Avenue extension, 60-foot Gold Street to the west, and the soon-to-be 75-foot wide Willoughby Street to the south. The Manhattan Bridge is approximately 6 blocks north along Flatbush Avenue extension. Immediately south of the proposed site is the 1.9 million square foot mixed retail and residential City Point development, which is currently under construction, and will also begin construction of Phase 3, which is a 59-story tower about 712 feet along Willoughby Street. Diagonally southwest is the recently approved 1-acre Willoughby Square open space with a public parking garage below, and the proposed 420 Albee Square office tower development, which is a separate application you're going to hear next on the agenda. Directly west of 141 Willoughby Street is 4 Metro Tech, a 1.3 million square foot, 25-story office building that Chase Bank is an anchor tenant in. Diagonally northeast and east across Flatbush Avenue extension is the 400-foot tall Torin, the 350-foot tall 86 Fleet Place, which is actually the development site here, a 2-story New York City Transit garage, a 1-story car wash here, and a 5-story New York City Department of Health office, and then, of courve, the Long Island University Brooklyn campus. As you can see, the area is extremely well served by transit with the 2, 3, A, C, F, B, Q, and R lines stopping within 2 to 3 blocks of the site, and then the 4, 5, and G within 3 to 4 blocks of the site. There are also numerous bus lines running along J Street, Fulton Street, and Myrtle Avenue. The proposed project area includes 3 tax lots, lots 1, 4, and 8. Lots 1 and 4 are the proposed development site. They're currently improved with a 3-story, 40,000 square foot private school called the Institute of Design and Construction, and a 16-space surface parking lot that's used by that facility. Combined, they include approximately 18,000 square feet of lot area. Lot 8 is approximately 2,500 square feet, is controlled by HPD, and is currently improved as a public open space pursuant to the land use controls set in the Metro Tech Urban Renewal Plan. However, Lot 8 is technically a mapped street, and a very small portion of the northern tip of Lot 8 is actually active roadbed. The proposed project area is located within the special downtown Brooklyn district and includes portions of a C64 and a C61 district. Lots 1 and 4 are mapped with a C61 district, which allows up to 6 FAR for commercial uses, 6.5 FAR for community facility uses, and has an R7 residential equivalent, which allows up to 3.4 FAR for residential uses. There's currently no bonus for the provision of affordable housing. Lot 8, which is mapped street and designated as open space per the Metro Tech URP, is mapped with a C64 district, which allows 10 to 12 FAR for commercial, community facility, and residential uses, depending on participation in the R10 inclusionary housing program or for utilization of urban design bonuses such as plazas and arcades. There is currently no maximum height limit. As described earlier, the surrounding uses and zoning districts are consistent with their location within Brooklyn's central business district and generally include high-density 10 to 12 FAR commercial, residential, hotel, and community facility uses within the C64 and C645 districts, and generally there is no maximum height limits, except for a 400-foot height limit located in this section of Flatbush Avenue extension here. Most of the area was rezoned in 2004 as part of the Downtown Brooklyn Plan, and the proposed project area was actually slated to be rezoned from the current C61 to a C64 district at that time. However, in response to public testimony by the site's then owner, the Institute of Design and Construction, they actually requested to be removed from the rezoning as they had no intention of selling or redeveloping the site at that time. Lot 8 was acquired by HPD in 1989 as part of the Metro Tech URP and was designated for a street widening as part of the Flatbush Avenue Extension enlargement. It was subsequently mapped as street. However, in 2004, as part of the Downtown Brooklyn Plan, the URP modified Lot 8's designation to open space and authorized HPD to dispose of the property. And just to familiarize yourself with the area, here's the school that we were talking about, the proposed development site. This is for Metro Tech, the Chase building here. This is looking north. Here's Willoughby Street in front, and this is Gold Street here. This is the construction fencing for City Point's Phase 3 tower. Here again is the school. And then we have the Torrin, Avalon, Fort Greene, and Oro towers across Flatbush. And here's looking south at the site. This is actually the Lot 8 HPD site. And that portion that I was talking about that's active roadbed is actually right where this car is parked, right here. If the actions are approved, the applicant, Savannah Equities, is proposing to develop a new 49-story, 577-foot high, 18 FAR, approximately 372,000 square foot mixed retail, office, and residential development on lots 1 and 4, and a publicly accessible open space on lot 8. The proposed development would include approximately 30,000 square feet of retail across the ground and second floors, approximately 94,000 square feet of office space across 7 floors, and approximately 248,000 square feet of residential floor area, including approximately 74,000 square feet of affordable floor area pursuant to a proposed MIH area. Here's a floor plan of the ground floor here, showing retail access pursuant to the Downtown Brooklyn Special District along Willoughby Street, Flatbush Avenue extension here. This would be the residential lobby along Gold Street, the office lobby along Gold Street, and then 2 loading bays here for the office uses. And then here we can see a typical office floor plan. This is for the 9 stories. The typical office floor plates are approximately 14,000 square feet. The applicants have stated they're responding to the extremely low office vacancy rates in downtown Brooklyn and the high demand for space geared towards the growing technology, advertising, media, and information sectors. This demand and subsequent inability to find office space has caused a ripple effect of office conversions and expansions across Brooklyn's neighborhoods. So this massing shows the proposed retail base and entrances and the office podium with the proposed open space terraces. And here's the location of the proposed publicly accessible open space on lot 8. And then here is typical floor plans of the residential floors. They're proposing to develop approximately 248,000 square feet of residential floor area, estimating approximately 270 rental apartments. This applicant is also proposing to map downtown Brooklyn's first MIH area, which would, they're proposing option 2, which would require 30%, or approximately 74,400 square feet of residential floor area to be permanently affordable. As I stated before, it should be noted that the existing C61 district has no affordable housing program currently. And the MIH proposal is significantly higher than the current R10 inclusionary housing program that currently exists in downtown Brooklyn, which relies on the older 5 to 6% affordable housing provisions. So here's a massing showing the proposed commercial podium and residential tower in context of the, here's Metro Tech just behind it, which you can see here. And this is the City Point Phase 3 tower just behind it here. So the proposed development site sits at a very prominent location in downtown Brooklyn along Flatbush Avenue Extension near the Manhattan Bridge. And this is a view actually from the Manhattan Bridge landing at Flatbush Avenue in northern downtown Brooklyn. The proposed development provides a strong street wall along Flatbush Avenue Extension with a lower base height of 40 feet, a small setback, and then rising to 145 feet. A 144-foot linear portion of the commercial base rises sheer from Flatbush Avenue Extension. That's this right here. And as I mentioned before, Flatbush Avenue Extension is 120 feet wide. The prow of the proposed development provides a slender 40 to 47 foot wide face as one approaches from the Manhattan Bridge. And then again, here's another view of the proposed publicly accessible open space on Lot 8. The proposed 577-foot tower is in relative context to existing and proposed developments within the immediate area, including new developments topped out on Willoughby Street, City Point's Phase 3, and the proposed 340 Flatbush Extension development, which recently transferred development rights from the landmark Dime Savings Bank to achieve a proposed 1,000-foot tower. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the private applicant is proposing a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendments, and EDC and HPD are proposing a city map change to demap a portion of Flatbush Avenue Extension over Lot 8. This rezoning would rezone a C61 district and a small portion of the C64 district to a C66 district, which would cover all of lots 1, 4, and 8. In addition, the applicant is proposing text amendments, which include designation of downtown Brooklyn's first MIH area in Appendix F, adding the proposed C66 district to the Special Downtown Brooklyn District, Section 101. As noted earlier, the existing C61 has no IH program associated with it, and the applicants would develop affordable housing pursuant to any future 421A agreement. But in this proposed scenario, the C66 district would have an R10 equivalent, in which the applicant is proposing to designate the 30% requirement per option 2, which would generate approximately 81 affordable rental units. The C66 district would allow up to 18 FAR, which would facilitate the creation of a significant amount of office space above ground floor retail spaces. And C66 district would have to be added to the Special Downtown Brooklyn District, and then therefore modify some of the locations within the envelope regulations applying in the Special Downtown Brooklyn District. It should be noted that the standard height and setback regulations and the majority of the tower regulations would remain unchanged. It's just plugging in the C66 district. However, related to setback regulations in 101-223 and 101-41, to facilitate the creation of more efficient office floor plates, the applicants are proposing to modify base height and maximum base heights, which are currently 60-foot minimum base heights. They're proposing to lower that to 40 feet, and then allowing the maximum base heights to rise to 145 feet. Again, as discussed, the tower regulations themselves would remain unchanged. And finally, EDC and HPD are proposing to demap a portion of Flatbush Avenue Extension. As discussed earlier, Lot 8 is mapped, mostly unbuilt street. This demapping would unlock nearly 48,000 square feet of development rights, which were pre-approved for disposition in 2004. In addition, Lot 8 would be removed from HPD's jurisdiction and obligations, and URP and land disposition agreement requirements would keep this space open and publicly accessible in perpetuity. Because of this, EDC and HPD are proposing to demap all of Lot 8, which includes approximately 2,600 square feet of open space. And here in the hatched blue is what's currently active roadbed and would remain active roadbed, and it's approximately 182 square feet. In conclusion, these actions would facilitate a new 372,000 square foot retail, office, and residential development, bringing much needed office space and affordable housing to downtown Brooklyn, and furthering the goals of the city's third largest central business district.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Questions, starting with the Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Very good presentation, Alex.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, with regard to lots 1 and 4, or at least the portion of the site occupied by the Institute of Design and Construction, did the developers acquire that portion of the site from the Institute?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Delausse.
Alex, I don't know if you know the answer to this question or not, but given how development in downtown Brooklyn has evolved, obviously to be more on the residential side than the commercial side, and the issues in general with overcrowding in schools, I'm just wondering if any thought was given to rethinking the Lot 8 situation and/or including bringing School Construction Authority into the conversation about utilizing some of the site to meet school seat need, or speaking with the development team about a portion of their office use, helping to meet some of the school need.
That's a great question. We're very aware of the kind of ongoing crowding issues in downtown Brooklyn in general as it relates specifically to
Extreme
elementary
crowding.
schools. Absolutely. And the future need as well. We're very aware of that. We initially did speak with SCA about how we could co-locate a school facility in this building. They had a little bit of concern given the irregular size of the site and the relatively smaller floor plates. They were looking for somewhere in the 40,000 square foot range, and to do that on this site, I think it was a number of stories tall, which they were kind of hesitant about doing. But I can let the applicant respond if they had an additional discussion about that. But we did initially look at how we could try and fit a school on this site, and it seemed a little difficult from SCA's perspective.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
I guess the question I have, I hear that, and certainly, you're right, that it's an irregularly shaped lot. I guess considering the need and considering how quickly development is happening in the area, where else would it go? So that would be my prime concern. If they really are passing on this, then hopefully they have someplace else in mind. So that would be helpful. I'm sure it'll come
Yeah,
up in
it
the
will.
public review process.
We'll treat it as a rhetorical question for now. Any other, Ms. Ortiz?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. One question on the retail space. I'm not really familiar with sort of the retail environment that's occurring along Flatbush. The majority of the entrances are in Flatbush. What's happening sort of immediately to the north or to the south? Is it going to create continuity between retail areas, or?
So Flatbush, as you're probably aware, has seen some retail challenges and continuity challenges, especially directly across the street, which has some lower scale. This is a car wash here. This is a health building that has kind of an offices on the ground floor. Has some grading challenges, but there are some retail here. City Point will have a significant amount of retail along Flatbush Avenue entrances here. And so, part of the...
So it sort of extends.
It will
North
actually
or
be pulling
city
kind of northward. These don't have a lot of frontward-facing activities along this section, so it would be pulling kind of from City Point northward. They have street wall continuity requirements as set in the special district here, and then there's actual retail requirements on Willoughby Street here. Those were already set within the special district.
Okay. And what you said is that City Point's going to have retail facing the street along.
Yeah,
Flatbush.
it's gonna be fronting along
Great.
this entire area.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and I one more thing. I would like to say thank you for putting multiple slides on a page on our presentations.
Sorry, it was out of order. It kind
No,
of did it.
save paper. I appreciate it.
Tough on the eyes, but it's there.
Always trying to stress sustainability. So, Ms. Efron and then Mr. Marin.
One quick question about Lot 8.
Yeah.
So it will be permanent open space, but it'll be owned by the owner by Savannah, or whatever group it is.
That's correct. Lot 8 is currently, jurisdiction is HPD, but it's mapped street, so it doesn't generate any floor area. So by demapping it, that floor area can then be moved off of that site. HPD will be transferring in fee Lot 8 to the developer, but there's two regulations tied to this. One is the urban renewal plan, which designates that site as open space in perpetuity. And then there's a contract between the sale of the property with HPD and EDC to the developer, which also requires that to be open space.
Right, and that was my second question. So there was compensation for the site once HPD demapped it. Okay, great, thanks.
Mr. Marin.
I was just curious, what happens to the Institute of Design and Construction?
That's actually a good question. I don't know what's going on with them, and I'll let the applicant respond to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions with respect to 141 Willoughby? If not, this is certified.
Let's now move to item number 7, page 240, proposed minor modification to the Brooklyn Center Urban Renewal Plan to remove supplementary bulk controls to facilitate a new commercial building at 420 Albee Square. We're on item number 7, page 240. Our presenter is Anand Amin.
Afternoon. This is an application by New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development seeking a minor change to the Brooklyn Center Urban Renewal Plan. The proposed change would require a supplementary building bulk control, which requires a setback along a shared lot line from the proposed project site in order to facilitate a new 37-story, 378,000 square foot commercial building in downtown Brooklyn, Community District 2. The proposed project site is within the special downtown Brooklyn district and is mapped with a C6 4.5 zoning district, which allows a range of high-density mixed-use residential and community facility uses of between 10 to 12 FAR without a max height limit. As Alex explained earlier, the surrounding area is within the downtown Brooklyn Central Business District. The Metro Tech campus is just to the north. The proposed 141 Reade Street application you guys just saw is to the northeast. City Point is directly to the east, and the proposed Willoughby Square is directly adjacent to the north. The proposed project area is Site 19B in the Brooklyn Center Urban Renewal Plan. The project area includes construction sites for new developments, 128 Key Hotel, a 2-story gym, and vacant city-owned properties that are currently being improved as a future site of Willoughby Square open space and public parking garage. That was before the commission last fall. The proposed development site is approximately 18,500 square feet, located on a regular T-shaped site immediately adjacent to and south of Willoughby Square. The proposed new building is 37 stories, 675 feet, consisting of approximately 378,000 square feet of office space. The proposed development would be as of right under existing use envelope and bulk controls, but for the building bulk controls on Site 19B pursuant to Section C3B of the URP. Section C3B requires any building fronting Willoughby Square to have a 15-foot setback after a maximum street wall height of 85 feet. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicants are requesting a minor change to the URP to remove the setback requirement for this site. The applicants have stated an office development on the proposed development site, given its size and irregular shape, requires relief from the setback control to achieve a reasonable Class A commercial office building floor plate. The applicants are proposing a typical office floor plate of nearly 11,000 square feet. However, the required setback would reduce the floor plate by 900 square feet, which the applicants have stated reduces the efficiency and viability of the proposed development. In addition to the constraining development site, the applicants have stated 3 other reasons that Site 19B should no longer be subject to the setback control, including modifications to the Willoughby Square design, a reduction in the number of acquired sites fronting Willoughby Square, and evolving street wall conditions in the surrounding area. The original design of Willoughby Square was modified, enlarging the open space and removing the private drive and adding a dog run and bike parking instead to the southern boundary that borders the development site. Secondly, the intent of the 2004 URP was to facilitate a large floor plate office building along the southern border of Willoughby Square. However, the majority of Site 19B is privately controlled, and the city has no intention of acquiring any more of the 19B sites, therefore reducing the frontage of the office building fronting Willoughby Square by half. Lastly, the base height datum between 80 to 85 feet was intended to create a uniform ring around Willoughby Square. However, the street wall conditions on the surrounding blocks vary significantly. Heights in the surrounding area range from 30 feet to 210 feet, as these sites were never acquired and are not subject to the URP controls. In conclusion, in order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicants are requesting a minor change to the Brooklyn Center Urban Renewal Plan to remove Site 19B from the list of sites that are subject to the setback control. The proposed development would introduce a new 37-story, 378,000 square foot office development with ground floor retail at 420 Albee Square in downtown Brooklyn. This ground-up office development would achieve a key goal of the 2004 downtown Brooklyn rezoning.
That's it?
Yep.
You didn't end with a real flourish there. You sort of ended. Questions? Mr. Knuckles.
Nearly 700 parking spaces.
Nearly 700 parking spaces, 694 for Willoughby Square open space.
It just seems like a lot of space.
That's a public park.
Public parking, yeah.
It's already approved.
Yeah.
It's under the,
That's part of the Willoughby Square project.
Mr. Cantor, then Mr. Dweck, then Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you. You said 675 feet, 37 stories.
Yes.
How do you break up those floor-to-floor heights?
I believe the typical floor height is 10 feet, but the applicants will be here to respond.
10 feet is not going to make 675, and even 15 feet's not going to make 675 for the office building. We can wait.
you can read that.
I believe they're 15 to 18.
So part of that total height includes all the bulkheads and on the top of the building.
Includes bulkheads too? So that's 20 feet, 30 feet. The numbers don't seem to, it would be good to learn the number.
Okay.
Mr. Dweck, and then Ms. Ortiz.
I'm just concerned about what are we getting in return? I'm not sure that the 15 feet setback is an impediment to the building. I looked at the floor plates that you showed earlier, where you went from 10,819 and you had a 900-foot reduction in it. So what are we getting in return? And perhaps something can be contributed to the park, to Willoughby Square Park, in accommodation of this?
Yeah, so this is a private application of the developers could probably speak to the viability and efficiency of the floor plate, but from their perspective, they have a concern with the reduction in this floor plate.
So as Anand may have already explained, the original purpose of the 15-foot setback was to create a uniform sort of shelf around the open space. Because the city is not going to acquire or proposing to acquire the other half of that frontage on the Willoughby Square open space, this setback no longer really makes sense. And it also impinges, the applicants are stating very significantly, on the viability of the floor plate. It would also make the building taller because of the floor area. And in the meantime,
they would go higher.
Right, because you wouldn't have that 900 square feet. It would go necessarily on top of the building.
The elimination, just to be clear about, the elimination of the setback does not increase the floor area of the building.
Does not increase or decrease the floor area.
It's not getting any additional
And as of
development.
right, they could just go as high as they want, pretty much.
They could go as high as they wanted to. We should note that this project is utilizing floor area that the city is disposing of and selling to this developer. So the city is gaining a benefit by this floor area from Willoughby Square on.
So this action, we're not giving them any additional FAR or any additional square feet at all?
They are getting additional.
From the city, I mean, I'm saying
Yes.
by this,
Shifting.
shifting the
Correct.
setback.
Shifting,
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Ortiz, and then Ms. Levin.
Along those lines, I was just curious about, not being familiar with office space, why the argument that, 10.8 is significantly better than 9 something, just so that we can educate ourselves in the future, understanding sort of what's an ideal floor plate, what kinds of spaces are our offices looking for right now. I think that would just be, interesting and useful information for this.
Ms. Levin?
Yes, with respect to the shelf condition, as Winston described it, that was originally behind the setback requirement, what's going on with the building, the sites that didn't get acquired? Lots, I guess it's lots 15 and 14 with the Indigo Hotel. So what is the condition going to be? Were we to approve this no setback, what's that
So
whole
those-
block front going to look like?
Yeah, so those two sites, the Indigo Hotel was a new development, so
It's built and it's not going
it's
anywhere.
not going anywhere, and it's at 210, and then,
And does it
right-
go straight up?
yeah, it goes straight up.
Okay.
And right in front of that is a 4-story, 30-foot-high building that's also not intended to be acquired by the city and will remain.
Okay. I'm sorry, you said how tall it was. How tall is it?
30 feet.
So with the setback requirement, we'd have a mismatch anyway. We'd have the 30 feet and the 85 feet.
True.
You can
So,
argue
yeah,
about,
so
okay,
the-
got it. And so then we're going to, from 30 feet to straight up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nan? Okay, this will be referred to the Community Board for 45 days.
Yep.
And we will see it on its return.
Right, thanks.
So let's now advance to item number 8, page 274, proposed renewal to a previously approved special permit and a modification to that permit to facilitate changes to the site plan and a reduction in the number of parking spaces. On item number 8, page 274, I'll present with Stephen Johnson in the Manhattan office.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod and Commissioners. This is a private application by 249 West 28th Street Properties LLC for a modification and renewal to a previously approved special permit for a public parking garage granted by the City Planning Commission in August of 2011 pursuant to zoning resolution sections 13562 and 7452. The property is located at 251 West 28th Street, Manhattan, Community District 5. The applicant is proposing to reduce the number of parking spaces by 135 spaces from the approved 325 to 190, use elevators instead of ramps to move vehicles around inside the building, and for a general redesign of the facility. The project area is located in an M16D zoning district in the Chelsea neighborhood, just south of the Garment Center, the landmark Farley Post Office, and Penn Station. The development site is a through lot between West 28th and West 29th Street and consists of blocks 778, lots 13, 16, 18, and 66, right here, around the red dotted area. All the lots are currently vacant. Lot 13, 16, and 18 were previously occupied by 371 public parking spaces. Lot 66 was formerly occupied by a 2-story building that has been demolished. The site has a lot area of approximately 29,000 square feet. We have our area map here with the development site in gray in the center, the gray indicating vacant land. To the south is the Fashion Institute in blue. Penn South is in the yellow right there, and MSG and the Penn Station are to the north. The zoning in the area is M15 to the north of the project site, M16 along 7th Avenue. And the 8th Avenue block fronts include a C6 3X zoning district, and to the south is a C6 2A and a C6 2 where the Fashion Institute is. Now, the development site was subject to 3 zoning actions in 2011. The special permit for a public parking garage, which is the focus of this modification, an area-wide rezoning and map amendment, along with 48 other tax lots or portions thereof located on the same block and the block immediately to the north. This is the M16 here. The rezoning was from an N15 manufacturing district within which residential use is not permitted to a mixed-use M16D district, which permits residential use under certain conditions. This was the first M16D in the city. The intent of it was to encourage new infill residential development while preserving commercial and manufacturing uses in that area. The M16D has a 9 FAR for zoning lots containing residences, and it is 10 for those that do not contain residences, and it could be increased to 12 through the provision of lower-income housing through the inclusionary housing program. Since the rezoning, no new dwelling units have been built in the rezoned area. However, there are 3 sites that have received plan approval and construction permits from DOB. We have the project area photos here. You can see from the southwest here, from West 29th Street, you're looking at the open lot. This is the lot we're looking at here. And this is from the southeast, and this is across the street. And this is from West 28th Street. This area here. Number 4, you're looking straight at the site, and that's the Fashion Institute there. So this is the first of 2 drawings of the previously approved special permit, which allows an attended public parking garage with a maximum capacity of 325 spaces on portions of the ground floor, cellar level, and sub-cellar level. Internal garage vehicle circulation would be provided by ramps. There would be 139 double height stackers. The parking area would consist of approximately 49,000 square feet. Access to the garage is through 2 entrances via, one is on West 28th Street on a one-way exit ramp that goes down. And then from West 29th Street, there's an entrance and an exit that also goes down. The West 29th Street entrance exit had 7 reservoir spaces, and the West 28th Street has 9 reservoir spaces. And here's just a picture of the cellar and the subcellar of the previously approved condition. Now, the applicant is proposing to redesign the garage due to the subsurface conditions. After further investigation into designing the structure, they found that excavation and construction into the bedrock and groundwater 16 feet below ground surface proved to be present additional costs and challenges. This is an enlargement of the previous drawing. So they are proposing to eliminate the subcellar. They would reduce the number of parking spaces from 325 to 190, including 80 double stackers. 1 curb cut would be located here. They moved the curb cut that was there to here with a 16-foot wide curb cut. You have the same entrance on West 29th Street with the 25-foot curb cut. There would be 10 reservoir spaces. The parking attendant would receive and send the vehicles down the elevators to the cellar level, where the parking attendant is rating, and they'd come up the same way where the driver would get their vehicle in the adjacent area by the elevators. All departing vehicles must exit via West 29th Street. Customer drop-off in the 19 bicycle parking spaces. This is bicycle parking here. This is the drop-off area. Have been moved up into the ground floor. The previous design had it at the cellar level. There's an 88 parking space also now on the ground floor, and it's located right here. And as in the previously approved special permit, the garage would include spaces for car share vehicles, subject to agreement with the car share operator, and provide a charging station for electric vehicles. Here is a cellar level. Also has an ADA access. These are all stackers that are indicated there. And here's an illustration of the building, 210 feet tall, 20 stories with a 10-foot high garage entrance and approximately 14-foot ground floor. The actions necessary to facilitate this: the applicant is seeking a renewal of the parking garage special permit for a 3-year term. The special permit would have lapsed on September 21st, 2015, unless substantial construction had been completed or unless a renewal application was filed. Before it lapsed, the applicant filed the renewal in August of 2015. The applicant seeks modifications of the special permit previously granted pursuant to sections 13562 and 7452 for the public parking garage to reflect the reconfigured design. The Manhattan Core parking regulations came into effect in 2013, so the garage is subject to the regulations in effect at the time of the 2011 special permit was granted. So 13562 sends us to section 7452, and section 7452 requires the commission to make the following findings: that the use will not be incompatible with or adversely affect growth and development in the area, that the use will not create or contribute to traffic congestion, that the use will draw a minimum vehicular traffic on local streets, there are adequate reservoir spaces, and the street is adequate to handle the traffic generated. Any roof parking will not impair the essential character or future use of development, and any exempted floor space is needed to prevent excessive on-street parking demand. Now, the applicant met these findings in 2011, and their current statement of findings is attached to your briefing package.
Thank you, Stephen. Questions? Mr. Marin?
Stephen, the second, there's two levels of parking. Were both levels previously below grade?
Yes.
So they
There
were
was a
both?
sub-cellar. There
That's
was a
correct.
cellar. Now
So-
there's just a cellar.
Okay, but there was no parking on the, what I'm gonna call the ground level, correct?
Correct.
So do we have an elevation of what that new facade may look like?
This is the closest that we have to an elevation. The facade is supposed to be, the garage entrance is supposed to be 10 feet high. I could ask the applicant if they have any illustrative drawings for us to look at.
That would be appreciated.
Any other questions? Okay, this is, will be referred to Community Board 4, I believe,
45 days.
45 days.
We were 4 or 5.
4 or 5?
5.
5, excuse me.
So our next item is item number 9, page 359. It's a non-discretionary ministerial certification with respect to proposed attached single-family residences in the Special Natural Area District of Staten Island. The action is that no authorization is required to develop these residences, and our presenter is Christy Udala. We're on item number 9, page 359.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. This is a private application requesting certification that no authorization is required pursuant to Section 10541 of the Special Natural Area District Regulations. This is to facilitate development of 4 attached single-family dwellings on a single zoning lot in an R32 district. The project site is located in the Toad Hill area of Staten Island's Community District 2, just south of the Staten Island Expressway. The site is presently developed with a detached one-family, single-story ranch-style residence, which was built prior to the establishment of the Natural Area District. This residence will be demolished. There are no prior CPC approvals. Land uses in the area include a public school in blue, Petrides Complex nearby to the west, the Staten Island Expressway about 800 feet to the north, and also to the north are some single-family detached residences, and to the east, detached and semi-detached residences where you can see the smaller building footprints, and to the south, detached single-family residences. The site is in the Special Natural Area District, shown here as a gray tone. The site is outlined in red at the middle of the circle, and you can see the subject site and blocks to the west, north, and east are zoned R32. Just south of the site, you see the border on Milford Avenue of an R11 district, which extends to the south. Here is an aerial showing the neighborhood context with the site at the center. The survey, the existing zoning lot is 10,448 square feet. It has 92 feet of frontage on Ocean Terrace, which is a final map street. The site is Tier 1, that means the topography is relatively flat with an average percent slope of 8%. There's no steep slope on the property, and there are 2 trees in the front yard providing 10 tree credits. There are no other significant natural features on the site as defined in the special district. The existing site has access to a sanitary sewer in Ocean Terrace, and dry wells will collect stormwater. Here is the proposed site plan. Oh, I wanted to, as you can see, that's the footprint in yellow of the single-family house. The proposed development is the applicant proposes to redevelop the site with 4 attached single-family dwellings on the single zoning lot. There will be 8 on-site parking spaces provided at a rate of 2 spaces per single-family dwelling. All of the proposed development, site alteration, grading, and tree removal are permitted in accordance with the Special Natural Area District regulations, and I can highlight a few things. Modification of topography is permitted for the building footprint itself and for driveways and required parking. Removal of trees within 15 feet of the building is permitted as of right, and these trees are within 15 feet of the proposed building. There's a replanting requirement of 11 trees for the 10,500 square foot lot, and no construction equipment will go beyond 15 feet of this proposed building footprint. The backyard will remain unchanged beyond 15 feet, and the proposed impervious, which is paved and built surfaces, is 49.19%. The action necessary to facilitate the project is a certification pursuant to ZR Section 10541, certification that no authorization is required. It's being requested. The applicant has demonstrated compliance with all applicable regulations of the Special Natural Area District. We received a letter on March 15th, 2016. The chairman received a letter from the Staten Island Borough President regarding this project, and that letter is in your package. The chairman responded with a letter dated March 29th, and that letter is in your package. The borough president commented that a CPC authorization for modification of topography pursuant to ZR Section 105-421 should be required, rather than the cert. Staff does not believe that an authorization is required for the proposed development.
Thank you, Kirsty. Questions and comments? Ms. Besser.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm surprised that the applicant would want to develop townhomes at this location. Toad Hill is primarily high-end detached homes. So I was just wondering, I mean, the return on investment would basically be the same or greater. Why the applicant, or would the applicant consider developing this parcel with detached properties?
The applicant noted in a phone call months ago that they felt that the individual townhomes are a more marketable product versus a two-family detached.
I respectfully disagree.
Mr. Knuckles.
Are there any, they don't appear to be in the packet, but do visuals, i.e. elevations, exist of the project?
Because the action required does not require elevations, we do not have them in the application.
Any other questions? Mr. Cirillo.
I guess it's, yes, there's a question in here. The,
You can make a statement, too,
I
if you
just
like.
caught on to the fact that I actually had a question. I guess sort of the global, I think the real issue, which I know you're familiar with, and obviously I read the correspondence back and forth. I think this is this is a good example of a bigger issue, which really involves when you have a zoning designation that permits legally certain built character, but you have a community that has a built character. And I think the sensitivity, this happens in all neighborhoods, so this isn't certainly unique to Staten Island, but so much of the abuse over the years, which led to all of the working groups and task force groups that worked on down zoning, which became the unbelievable movement of, the late 1990s and the beginning of the new, millennium. The fact of the matter is you had these existing built neighborhoods of 1- and 2-family homes, even in neighborhoods that could have had much greater density and different built characteristics like garden apartments and things like that. And back then, things were being knocked down and completely different built forms were being made on the corner of the block that had, 50-year-old one-family homes. So I think this is sort of reminiscent of that, and is a problem. It's unfortunate because this doesn't look like anything that's happening right there. I know we can go to the north and we can go all over and find something similar, but in the neighborhood and the impact on the surrounding neighborhood, this definitely will have that in terms of what's visualized there. So I think that's really the issue. I guess the longer term question is, in neighborhoods where we have long established built character, what is the answer to that? And I know the communities really need to be they need to lead that in a lot of ways, unless there's something obvious to all of us. We couldn't possibly do that. But I guess, at some point, probably we should be looking in the boroughs, all the boroughs, not just Staten Island. But I guess so, is that something we would consider? I mean, that's really the question after the statement, but that sort of explains a lot.
I would say, and I think that the exchange of letters between the borough president and me really providing the staff perspective on this is that, first, I mean, and it's a peculiar element of our zoning resolution that we sometimes are asked to vote on issues where we fundamentally have no discretion, which is the exact opposite to what a planning commission should be about, which is we are a commission that deals with discretion, and yet we are occasionally, by our legislation, put in a position where we're voting on things we don't have a discretion. We might as well be, 12 or 13 automatons deciding something. And that's unfortunately the situation here. And in this particular case, as my letter to the borough president noted, the Staten Island office did suggest to the local neighborhood that one option here would be to apply for rezoning, given the surrounding neighborhood and the exact set of circumstances that you mentioned. And I think that, as you said, we really don't have the resources or truly the priority at the moment to go out and seek neighborhoods out which have these characteristics. But on the other hand, certainly if a neighborhood like this one came in and said we would, with an application to rezone appropriately, we would certainly consider it. I mean, and that, I think, is the underlying issue here. Any other comments on this? Okay, this will be scheduled for a vote, and duly noted the practical impact here.
Thank you, Kirsty. Let's now move to item number 10, page 370, a proposed authorization to facilitate a detached two-family residence, the Little Neck, Queens neighborhood. Item number 10, page 370, and our presenter is Scott Solomon, the lead project planner for this from Queens office. Item number 10, page 370.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod. The applicant, Ms. Carolina Travalos, seeks approval of CPC authorization pursuant to Section 2242 to waive the requirement that at least 75% of the floor area of one dwelling unit be located directly above or below the other, in order to facilitate the development of two side-by-side dwelling units with the appearance of one detached two-family residence. At 25523 58th Avenue, the development site is located in Little Neck, Queens, in Community District 11. The development site is located on the northwest corner here of 256th Street and 58th Avenue. The site is located in a R3X zoning district, and the surrounding area is currently zoned with a mix of R3X, R32, and R2A districts. R3X districts allow only 1 and 2 family detached homes. R32 districts allow a variety of housing types, including low-rise attached houses, small multifamily apartment houses, and detached and semi-detached 1 and 2 family residences. R2A districts are limited exclusively to single-family detached homes. All 3 districts have a maximum residential FAR of 0.5. This may be increased by an attic allowance of 20% for both the R3X and R32 districts. The maximum building height the maximum building height for all 3 districts is 35 feet, with a perimeter wall height of 21 feet. All 3 districts require at least 1 parking space per dwelling unit. In 2006, the city approved zoning changes to the surrounding area as part of the Douglaston Little Neck rezoning to reflect the area's established character and scale.
This resulted in this property being rezoned from R32 to R3X. The approximately, let me describe these photos first. The photo on the top left here is facing from 256th Street to the side. The photo on the bottom left is facing the front from 58th Avenue, and the third photo is from the intersection. The approximately 4,723 square foot development site includes the entirety of tax block 8345, lot 1, and is currently improved with a 1,320 square foot, one-story, one-family house. Built to a .28 FAR, the lot contains 50 feet of frontage along 58th Avenue and 100 feet along 256th Street. The predominantly residential neighborhood is located between the Long Island Expressway and Grand Central Parkway, and just 1 block west of Little Neck Parkway. Here is a streetscape drawing showing the surrounding neighborhood. Is primarily developed with 1 and 2 story single and 2 family detached residences. The floor area ratio, lot coverage, lot size, yards, setbacks, parking, planting, parking, and street tree requirements comply with the requirements of the R3X district. You may see in this drawing, in red is the proposed height, 27 feet, 7 inches, and you'll see a range between a 12-foot single-story house here to a 28-foot two-story house here, ranging between 25 feet throughout, 24 feet, 25 feet. Here are a few sample of some photos from the immediate area. On the top left is a house looking at 58th Avenue, west of 256th Street. This is a two-family homes attached. Here on the photo to the top right is a 2-story, 2-family house. Another 2-story, 2-family house. Again, 2-story, 2-family. And then finally here in photo C in the bottom left is a single detached 1-family house, indicative of the neighborhood character. In terms of requested action, the applicant is requesting authorization pursuant to section 2242 to waive the 75% authorization. Per 2242, the CPC may authorize a waiver of the requirement, provided that the commission finds that A, the development is compatible with the scale and character of the surrounding area, and B, the design does not give the appearance of a semi-detached building. In terms of the proposed project, the existing house on the property will be demolished. The applicant proposes construction of a detached 2-family building on the 4,773 square foot lot. This photo here shows the elevation. The top line indicates 35-foot maximum height. The maximum height would go up to 28 feet. This is facing the top from 256th Street. Here on the bottom, it is facing from 58th Avenue. The 2 dwelling units are proposed to be located side by side, and they will total 2,827 square feet. Per the applicant, the development is such that it does not give the appearance of semi-detached building. The bulk of the building follows the as-of-right building envelope, and its form is consistent with other 2-family homes in the vicinity. In this photo, you will see line here demarcating Unit 2 and the predominant Unit 1 to the right. The following elements of the proposed building give the appearance of a 2-family detached residence. Traditionally, semi-detached buildings provide 2 entrances facing the same street. The proposed building benefits from the corner location and is designed to provide an entrance for one unit on 58th Avenue, the other on 256th Street. Since there is no party wall, the roof line is continuous. This element is not evident in the roof line, which would normally suggest a semi-detached residence. Semi-detached residences generally have separate parking access for the units. This proposal will provide access to 2 required parking spaces by way of a single curb cut. Curb cut indicated here to the north, and the single driveway. Semi-detached buildings usually have separation of yards for each building segment, but the yard for the proposed design is continuous and will give the appearance of a detached building. Unit 1 will be 1,804 square feet. Unit 2 slightly smaller at 1,023 square feet. The proposed 2-story building would have an FAR of 0.6, utilizing the attic allowance, and rise to a height of approximately 28 feet. The 2 required parking spaces you can see accessible from the driveway will be accessible by the 10-foot curb cut on 256th Street. the front yard of 58th Avenue setback to the adjacent front yard depth of 24 feet and 10 feet on 256th Street. The side yard setbacks are 6 feet on 58th Avenue and 25 feet on 256th Street. The proposed lot coverage is proposed to be 30%. On May 2nd, the community board voted 29-7 to vote to approve the waiver with no conditions.
Thank you, Scott. Questions? Mr. Knuckles?
So is that an enclosed garage that they park in?
It is.
Okay, is it separated inside, or is it, they just put their cars in there as if it were public?
It's located in the cellar, which you can, Unit 1 will be able to enter through their unit. Unit 2 will have to walk outside into their unit, but it's located in the building. I can pull back to this photo, shows it a little better here.
So there is a partition between the two spaces?
Yes, so
I see.
in this spot, there'll be a wall.
Yeah.
Unit 1 will be able to enter, Unit 2 will walk around to their entrance.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, this will be scheduled for a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's now move to item number 11, page 397. It's a Queensbury hearing application with respect to the proposed notice of intent to acquire office space at 36-36 33rd Street, used by the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. Our presenter is Debbie Carney. We're on item number 11, page 397, Queensbury hearing.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services proposes to acquire approximately 27,000 square feet of rentable office space on a portion of the 5th floor at 3636 33rd Street in Queens Community District 1. This space would be used as offices for the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and it would facilitate the expansion of its programs and services. And the agency is also hiring a significant number of new staff, and this space would accommodate that growth. The site is located in Long Island City. It is zoned M1-2 and R6A. It is located in the Dutch Kills subdistrict of the Special Long Island City Mixed Use District, shown in the red. Closer look at the site. It's this It's the L-shaped site shown here along 33rd Street between 36th and 37th Avenues. You can see that the surrounding uses are a mix of uses of industrial, residential shown in the yellow, and office buildings shown in the pink, with commercial uses along 36th Avenue to the north. This is a closer look at the building. It's right in the center. This is a 5-story building located at 33rd and 37th Avenue. This is the former Brooks Brothers building. It was gut renovated in 2000, and it includes a spacious lobby, upgraded elevators. The building is less than a half a mile from the agency's Gotham Center headquarters. DOHMH proposes to acquire approximately 27,000 square feet of rentable square feet to accommodate approximately 200 staff members on a portion of the 5th floor. The agency is taking the space largely in its current condition, with an existing open space plan with a few existing offices. Other floor tenants on the 5th floor include the Therapeutic Resources and Queens Counseling Services. This location is also accessible to subway service. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Why don't you do why don't you do the second one, and we'll discuss them both at the same time.
So the Department of Citywide Administrative Services is also proposing to acquire approximately 50,000 square feet of office space on the 20th and the 24th floors at One Court Square, also known as the City Court Building, in Queens Community District 2. This space would be used as offices. The agency is also hiring a significant amount of new staff, and the space is needed to accommodate that growth. One Court Square is located within the Court Square sub-district of the Long Island City Special Mixed-Use District. It's shown here. It's in the center within the C53 district. This is a high-density district. The Special Mixed-Use District is intended to promote a varying densities and a mix of long-standing commercial, residential, industrial, and cultural uses. An FAR of 15 can be obtained within that C53 zone if connections are made to the subway improvements. Adjacent zoning districts within the Long Island City district provide a mix of densities, as you can see, from mid to high density. And the uses surrounding the site are a mix of, for the most part, low, but you do have some high-density uses, particularly leading up to Queens Plaza South. This is a closer look at the building. It's 50 stories high. The agency proposes to acquire 50,000 square feet of office space under a sublease arrangement that runs through April 29th, 2020. DCAS intends to obtain a long-term agreement in the interim. The proposed acquisition will accommodate approximately 250 staff members on the 20th and 24th floors. DOH, the agency is taking the space largely in its current condition with an existing open space plan with a few existing offices. Citicorp is the only other tenant in the building, and it has great access to the subway system.
Thank you, Debbie. Questions? Ms. Knight?
Debbie,
On both or either?
this is with respect to One Court Square. Do you know what the vacancy rate is in that building?
Oh, gosh, no, I don't, but that's a question that we can ask at the public hearing.
And I believe that Citicorp has now sold the building to Savannah, is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Delauze?
Debbie, can you just talk a little bit about what the expansion will accommodate and whether or not the public will be accessing these spaces on a regular basis?
These are solely office spaces. There will be no public visitations. Both of these addresses have their own programs that they will be accommodating. For the 3636 33rd Street, there are 5 programs listed, including their school health program, their catch vision screening. There's a program concerning rat reservoirs, areas that are frequented with rat infestation, and then a pet shop regulation where they can step up on their enforcement activities with pet shops. With the One Court Square, the programs that they will be expanding are the New York City SAFE program, the Mental Health Roadmap program, and something called Ending the Epidemic program. There's also the agency's Bureau of Science and Engineering, responsible for monitoring our quality of water, will also be expanding into that building.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin?
So related to that question, Debbie, do you know, or maybe DCAS can tell us at the hearing, will these programs be relocating from other space? Are there vacancies in other space being created? Is the city giving up other space, or is this purely expansion?
I believe it's expansion. I mean, they're outgrowing their headquarters, and they're hiring new staff. Many of these new staff members will remain in the headquarters, but there's this overflow and a need.
Okay.
That's 550 people.
So in both cases, this is expansion, as the application says, expansion space, not replacement space.
It's expansion space, yeah.
And my assumption, this is all expansion from the headquarters that's already in Long Island City, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, in both cases?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions about either of these proposed leases? There'll be a public hearing on Wednesday, and BCAS will be well represented by Ms. Lazarson. We look forward to seeing you again, Ms. Lazarson. So, okay, thank you, Debbie.
So Commissioners, let's now welcome back Alex Summers for the Brooklyn Post hearing discussion with respect to proposed special permit and a zoning text amendment to facilitate new development at 25 Kenneth. Alex.
Hello again. So in your packages, you received 3 sets of materials. The one set was from the applicant representative discussing some of the questions that had been raised at the previous review sessions regarding construction and tenanting space. The second set was a letter from SF Made in response to their 100 Hooper proposed development. And the third set was a combined large package from ANHD and Pratt Center, which included some testimony that you've already likely have seen or heard, as well as some additional study materials from both groups. In addition, there are a number of department staff recommendations for modifications for this application. I'd like to go over some of those now. The first is nomenclature regarding the geography as well as the incentive uses. This was raised at the initial certification discussion. And so to encourage clarity on what is bonus and what is incentive, that's what this intention is for. So the geography is currently proposed as enhanced business area. Department staff are recommending it be revised to be called industrial business incentive area to clarify the intent of this. And then clarifying the uses. So currently we have business enhancing uses, which is the required component, and incentive uses, which is the bonus floor area. Department staff are recommending to rename the business enhancing uses to required industrial uses to clarify that. And then keeping incentive uses the same as it's an incentive use. The second component by department staff is a recommendation to reduce the applicable text geography from the current proposed 14-block area to the development site alone, the 1-block area. This is based on comments from the community board, as well as the borough president, as well as information gathered throughout the public hearing process. Given that this is an experimental project, we do feel that it would be appropriate to reduce the geography. And then finally, on sunlighting, the overall, what we're calling now the required industrial uses. We heard some of the recommendations from the borough president regarding a placard, and we do believe that that's a meaningful response. That placard would be similar to our existing FRESH program, and we would talk about the details of that. And in addition, the production of a developer-run website indicating the industrial use tenants, their names, and their square footage, and additional information as necessary to help sunlight and daylight what's going on inside of the building. And this would also be just publicly open data at all times. To respond to any questions.
Questions to Alex? Yes, Ms. Ortiz, and then Ms. Deluz.
One question, have we resolved sort of the concerns around monitoring and being able to look at this, if this in fact is a pilot, what are we looking at in terms of measuring its impact to be able to potentially replicate it?
So we feel that the website is a way to have an ongoing review of the industrial tenants, and we can discuss what would be involved in that website, but we believe that indicating the actual tenants' names, they're doing business as names, their square footage that they're taking, as well as their location in the development and other facts like that, I think will give us kind of us as well as nonprofits and advocacy groups kind of a look into the inside of the
Will there also be information collected? I mean, that's a public forum, so leasehold rates are somewhat sensitive, but I imagine that's an important piece of this as well.
We can look at, like, the leasing rates and things like, we can look into that and see if that's possible.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Ms. Delauze?
I'm just wondering, because we framed this as a pilot or an experiment, if we want to be clear about the public goals that we're trying to achieve, and then determine a period that we're going to evaluate whether or not they were met. And I'm wondering, I appreciate that based on the feedback, reducing the geographic area from 14 blocks to 1, that's a very significant change. I'm just wondering similarly whether or not there's thought to looking at the text language and not have it be applied citywide. And as part of the fact that this is a pilot or an experimental effort at this point. Wondering where staff is at in the thinking on that.
So to clarify on the text language, while it is located within the zoning resolution, it still only is applicable to
wherever it's mapped.
It would be exactly the same as MIH, where the Appendix F map, it doesn't apply anywhere except for where that map is designated.
I get that. I think the big difference between what's proposed here and MIH is that MIH had a pretty significant research component that informed what portion was enhanced and what portion was required. And in this case, we don't have that. And so to me, that's the main difference here. And if we're going to use it as a pilot, then that would help inform what future text could indicate is the appropriate ratio or balance. Right now, I think everything we've heard is about this is the right calculation based on this site.
Ms. Levin?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Delauze got to several of the issues that have really concerned me about this. I came in here with a list of things that I was going to tell you I felt really strongly about. But reducing this to this site really does make it more of the pilot that we have been told it is, and I guess I'll think about it, but I'm probably willing to be less worried about the things that did worry me. It did worry me that there is no financial analysis underpinning to the ratio here. And we were really told that it was a ratio based on an assessment of surrounding area uses, which, as Commissioner Delauze indicated, and I'll say more forcefully, I don't think is good enough for establishing a big city policy. But I do understand that it works on this site, so.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, but has more of a rational connection to this site, it's less of an overall thing, which is the way it was set up as before, and therefore I thought defective. I'm also, was really concerned through the public hearing about the lack of strong testimony about how the industrial space was going to work and real sort of belief in the industrial space. And my mind is drawn to the inclusionary housing model where you have an administering agent, to the failures that we saw in the garment center preservation initiatives where there is no enforcement mechanism. There's got to be a guardian and an advocate for industrial space here. The website on a pilot basis is good enough, I suppose, better than nothing, certainly inadequate for a 14-block area. So again, the reduction makes me feel better. Then on an issue that I guess maybe I've become an increasing advocate for is on sustainability. I really appreciate the information we were given from the developer. Sounds like they took that to heart and are in fact incorporating those notions into the building. But I do think that if we're setting a model for development in the new era, that we really ought to be including in the text a requirement that the developer demonstrate to us that sustainable design features are being included so that this is a building for the new era. And the language, I'm sorry I keep going back to the Vanderbilt corridor, very different context, but it's pretty gentle language that could work here, which is that it's got to include sustainable design features, including but not limited to enhancements to the energy performance, enhanced water efficiency, utilization of sustainable or locally sourced materials, and attention to indoor environmental air quality of the building. All of those things are things that, from the materials we got from the developer, they're thinking about, but they're just as applicable to a building like this as they are to a gigantic building like One Vanderbilt, and I think they ought to be included in the text.
Can I ask a question about that? I mean, there is a difference between a building like Vanderbilt, not just in terms of size, a building like Vanderbilt, which is functionally a single-purpose use, which is an office building, as opposed to a building that is designed to be an experiment to encourage multifunctional use, not just multi-tenants, but multi-functions, including industrial and manufacturing. And well, I think we all appreciate the need and desire to have as robust sustainability requirements as possible. I just wonder if we shouldn't be careful about straitjacketing a sustainability standard that might well be different for office use than.
Oh, yeah, but I think this is very general language, and all it says is that when an applicant comes in, they have to demonstrate to us that they've thought about this stuff. And I think particularly in a building where you're mixing industrial use and commercial use, you want to be extra careful that the building includes features that allow those two uses to coexist well.
Ms. Ellis?
This is more just a general question. Just looking at the letter from Gensler, and this kind of follows up on something that Commissioner Levin just said. I'd be interested in learning more about the wired certified gold level, only because we've heard now, both in the East New York rezoning, and it's kind of coming up here, just how important the internet infrastructure is to ensuring that these developments are successful. And I guess I'm just wondering if we shouldn't learn more about that as a commission and think about how to incorporate it, especially into special permits and things like that.
That was the first time I've heard about that as well.
I don't know what it is.
Any other questions about 25 Kent? Hearing none. Thank you, Alex.
So, Commissioners, staff have prepared favorable resolutions for your consideration this Wednesday, May 11th. We have the Greater JFK bid. We have the One Flushing proposal, which is a series of actions to facilitate a mixed-use building with affordable housing. We have the East New York Savings Bank Parkway Branch Landmark, and we have 112 Iron Mine Drive, which is a proposed special natural area district certification. The no authorization is required to facilitate an expansion to a single-family residence. And on May 25th, these are all applications that are all projects that were presented today. We have 704 Ocean Terrace, 3636 33rd Street for the Department of Health and Mental Services offices. We have 1 Court Square for that use as well, and 25 Kent Avenue. Based on the discussion this afternoon, there will be modifications to that proposal.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Madam Secretary, is there any other matters to be brought before us?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Then I will happily entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.